Mananas Idus, Todos Hamzu, and good morning. Thank you all for being here, and welcome to your Guam Legislature, the 38th Guam Legislature, and thank you for being here this morning. This morning's public hearing is conducted by the Committee on Finance and Government Operations, and is called to order at 0901 on this Monday, October 13, 2025. First notice of this public hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on October 6, 2025, with its second notice disseminated on October 10, 2025. These hearings notices were also made available on the Guam Legislature's website, our legislative calendar, and the Government of Guam's public notice portal. The committee will hear testimony on the following bills. Bill number 174-38 COR, introduced by Vice Speaker V. Anthony Ada, an act to add a new Chapter 53 to Division 2 of Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing the Guam Free Trade Zone Act of 2025, and to designate a free trade logistic zone to establish trade facilitation incentives and to promote Guam as a re-export center for the Indo-Pacific region, and to appropriate the sum of $500,000 to the fund for purposes of this act. We will also hear Bill number 156-38 COR, introduced by Senator Joe S. and Agustin, an act to amend 58104B2 and 58106, all of Chapter 58, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to authorizing the extension of the lease agreement under the Guam Education Financing Foundation, also known as GEFF, to finance the capital improvements and modernization of Guam Department of Education, GDOE facilities with $59,370,000. At this time, I'd like to welcome my colleagues who are joining us this morning. To my right is the Vice Speaker. Vice Speaker Ada is also the Vice Chair of this committee. And we got Senator Sean Gumatauta with us today, and Senator Joseph Agustin, and also Senator Therese Chalahi. Thank you, colleagues, for joining us today. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone in attendance of Legislature Guahan's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking, and shall state their full name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance of the nature of the bills that are on the agenda. Personal inferences to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from the hearing of any member of Legislature Guahan or the public audience who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 38th Guam Legislature standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in immediate removal from this public hearing room. We will now turn to the first bill on our agenda and proceed with testimony on Bill number 174-38 COR. But before we do that, I'm going to allow the author of the bill, Vice Speaker Ada, to open on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What Bill 174-38 COR does is that it creates a free trade logistics zone, and it designates a geographic area within the country where goods can be imported, stored, manufactured, and re-exported while being subject to normal customs duty and regulations. The FTLZs are designed to streamline international trade by allowing companies to delay, reduce, or avoid custom duties, thereby cutting costs and boosting economic activity. We all know that ships bring cargo to Guam, they arrive full, but then they leave empty, and Guam businesses are actually paying for that round trip of shipment from the West Coast. Additionally, the Jones Act protects U.S. shipping companies from foreign competition. It's my hope, Mr. Chair, that this bill will create a Guam free trade logistics zone so that we can help fill up the ships leaving Guam with cargo and balance out the cost of shipping to and from the West Coast of the United States. The tax incentives on this bill will not cost the government of Guam anything, since it only exempts the new business activities that are created by the bill's provisions. It's my hope that the enactment of this bill will result in lower shipping costs and more jobs and more opportunities for our people. I look forward to hearing the testimonies from those who will be testifying on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sijus Masi, Vice Speaker Ada, and we have several who have signed in support of this legislation, but as it states here for oral testimony, we have Ed Camacho from GIDA. Please come forward, Ed. And also, it looks as though we have Franklin Gutierrez from CQA. Please come forward. And anybody else signed up for oral testimony? Chief, Yeah, I got your written, but it wasn't checked for oral, but please come forward, Chief. And of course, we got Chief Ike Pereno that's here, and looks like Mr. Perez will be testifying as well. Thank you for being here, Chief. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Chief Ike Pereno, and then we'll just go over and complete customs, and then we'll roll over to GITA. Director, you have the floor, and the time is yours.
Good morning. Honorable Senator Chris Duenas and members of the committee here. My name is Ike Pereno, and I am the Director for the Customs and Quarantine Agency. I want to express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to appear before you today to provide testimony on Bill 174-38. The Customs and Quarantine Agency stands as Guam's indispensable first line of defense. Our fundamental mission is to safeguard our island, its cherished people, and invaluable resources, all while actively facilitating trade, commerce, and travel. CQA is entrusted with the critical responsibility of enforcing both local and federal laws by securing our borders and protecting all ports of entry. This rigorous oversight ensures the continued fiscal, social, and economic security, not only in Guam, but also of the broader region. Since 1950, the administration of all customs formalities, processes, and mandates have been diligently carried out by the government of Guam, specifically through the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency, its predecessors and entities. It is crucial to understand that the territory of Guam operates outside the customs territory of the United States. Consequently, Guam is not subject to the provisions of the customs statutes of the U.S. as contained in Title 19 U.S. Code or Title 19 Code of the Federal Regulations. However, when applicable to Guam, U.S. regulations and statutes governing the admissibilities and enterability of goods, merchandise, conveyances, and contrabands are rigorously enforced at our ports of entry by CQA. A fundamental difference which distinguishes Guam from many other customs administrations globally is its designation as a duty-free port. This unique statute permits all goods or merchandise that meet local and, when applicable, federal requirements for admissibility to enter the commerce of Guam without the payment of duty or tariffs, as practice commonly observed in most parts of the U.S. and the world. Apart from the assessment and payment of goods and merchandise subject to the Guam property tax, more commonly known as the use tax, and the Guam tobacco tax, all other goods and merchandise can be imported, cleared, and introduced into commerce of Guam. This process is contingent upon the importer providing sufficient proof of appropriate business licenses or exemptions to CQA at the time of clearance. Bill 174-38 would establish the Guam Free Trade Zone Act of 2025. Requires the Guam Economic Development Authority, GDOE, to identify, map, and recommend free trade logistics zone, establish trade facilitation incentives, and promote Guam as a re-export center of the Indo-Pacific region. Based on my understanding, the purpose of this act is to allow goods to be imported, stored, processed, produced, modified, re-exported without being subjected to customs tariffs or other customs regulation. The Act intends to help shippers improve margins, lower inventory, simplify, and streamline customs procedures. It should be noted that goods imported into Guam from the U.S. are not exempted from tariffs, which is why the recent removal of the de minimis rule poses a problem. This bill notably mirrors the spirit and purpose of Public Law 36-23, more widely recognized as the Guam Transshipment Task Force. That task force was especially charged with investigating Guam's potential to ensure its role as a key transshipment point to significantly expand transshipment, manufacturing, and export activities as an integral part of the overreaching economic diversification plan for the island. The comprehensive feasibility study conducted by the task force identified substantial opportunities. These opportunities leverage Guam's strategic geographic position in the Western Pacific. It advances shipping and airline routes connecting Asia and the U.S. mainland and the special U.S. insular possessions opportunities provided by Headnote 3A of the Harmonized Tariff Code of the United States. Moreover, the study strongly underscores the critical need for local statutes that would expand CQA's statutory authority to effectively regulate customs, bonded warehouse, stereo areas in the broader environment, and various trade facilitation zones, such as the Free Trade Logistics Zone. It also strongly advocates for the integration of the SafePort Act and provides a federal grant eligibility, which are crucial for modernizing our operation. Lastly, the study emphasized the necessity of a robust workforce development and retention funding as fundamental prerequisites for successful implementation and long-term stability, sustainability of this similar initiative. More research needs to be done regarding this legislation. Before implementing this legislation, further research is required to assess its legal feasibility, applicability to the de minimis threshold, and align with existing foreign trade zone regulations. Although Guam is outside the U.S. Customs territory, the authority to establish customs pre-clearance facilities or bonded warehouse falls solely under the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, as governed by federal law. Importantly, Guam is not considered part of the U.S. territory. As such, it is necessary to classify whether, to what extent federal customs exemptions or thresholds, such as Section 321, de minimis provisions, apply to goods re-exported from Guam. Additionally, elevated compatibility with the FTZ frameworks. We must examine how the proposed free trade zone logistics zone would interact with or potentially conflict with the Foreign Trade Zone Act of 1934 and CBP's regulation under Title 19 CFR Part 146. CQA proposes amendments or to work closely with this committee to refine the bill's language. These amendments are designed to significantly enhance our ability to effectively carry out the overreaching intent of the legislation. The clearest and most prevalent amendment we propose in the current language of Bill 174-138 relates to a critical omission, the lack of fundamental authority which globally is inherent to all customs administration. This authority is to regulate bonded warehouse, stereo areas, and trade facilitation zones. As currently drafted, this legislation assigns this critical responsibility to GDOE. While GDOE's role and other responsibilities are undeniably necessary in achieving the ambitious goals intended by this legislation, namely to foster economic opportunity, secure federal local agreements, and attract vital investment for both local and international sources, and are indeed critical for success. There is a fundamental distinction to be made. The responsibility to enforce and regulate such facilities as the FTLZ is inherently a customs/CQA matter. We are statutorily, operationally, procedurally, and conventionally best suited to monitor border transaction activities. Our expertise in customs laws, border security, and trade compliance positions us uniquely to oversee these areas, ensuring adherence to all regulations and safeguarding the integrity of Guam's economic and security landscape, meeting federal requirements. Therefore, transferring this core regulatory authority to CQA is not only logical, but essential for the effective and secure implementation of the Guam FTZ. Again, thank you for allowing me to provide this testimony today, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Susmasi, Chief Pareto. Chief Paris, do you have a testimony as well?
Yes, thank you, and good morning, honorable senators and Susmasi. My name is Vincent S. Perez of My name is Vincent S. Perez. I am the Chief of the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency. I am submitting testimony to express our support for the intent behind Bill number 174-38 COR to expand Guam's economic base through logistics, re-export, and bonded trade, but to also respectfully recommend that these objectives be implemented through amendments to Guam's enabling statute 5 GCA Chapter 73 rather than a separate statute under Title 12. Amending Chapter 73 to include a new article entitled Customs Oversight and Security for Trade and Logistics Operations will provide the necessary enforcement, bonding, licensing, and workforce framework to make Guam's free trade and logistics initiative both credible and sustainable. The need for statutory foundation in Chapter 73. Bill 174-38 addresses the concept of a free trade logistics zone only at a surface level. It creates an economic framework for the development, but omits the law enforcement and customs control mechanisms critical to the lawful movement, storage, and re-export of goods. Guam's customs law 5 GCA Chapter 73 is the proper and established framework for regulating such operations. Updating this chapter ensures that the legal foundation for trade facilitation, security, and revenue protection rests with Guam's designated enforcement authority. Recommended addition to 5 GCA Chapter 73, a new article called Customs Oversight and Security for Trade and Logistics Operation. Title and purpose: to establish the Customs Oversight and Security for Trade and Logistics Operations Act to regulate and safeguard trade, bonded warehousing, and logistics operations in Guam. Enforcement authority: designate the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency as the lead enforcement and regulatory authority for all bonded, transshipment, and logistics operations, including those within any free trade logistics zone or tariff advantage area established by law. Licensing and fees: authorize customs to issue licenses to bonded warehouse operators, carriers, freight forwarders, logistics providers, and other entities engaged in regulated trade operations. Customs shall collect reasonable licensing, inspection, and service fees deposited into a customs enforcement revolving fund. Bonding requirements: require importers, carriers, brokers, and operators to maintain customs bonds guaranteeing compliance with laws and payment of duties, penalties, and fees consistent with 19 CFR Part 113. Security and compliance standards: mandate adherence to the Safe Port Act, Port Security Grant Program, ACE and CTPAT standards, and require ISO-compliant container seals, access control, and surveillance systems. Workforce development and retention: to direct, in collaboration with the Department of Administration and the Post Commission, to implement a non-competitive career ladder and GS-aligned pay structure for all customs officers to ensure parity with customs and border protection positions, to promote retention and stem the bleeding. Rulemaking and coordination: authorize customs to promulgate regulations and enter into an MOU with GDOE, Port Authority of Guam, Airport Authority, and our federal counterparts for coordinated enforcement and data sharing. Funding: establish a continuing appropriation for customs operations related to enforcement, technology, and workforce development, including eligibility for federal grants and port security funds. The rationale for integrating these provisions into Chapter 73. Integrating this new article into Chapter 73 ensures legal consistency, institutional clarity, and fiscal responsibility. It codifies customs as the single enforcement authority, aligns customs framework with the federal standards, and embeds workforce stability through the GS-aligned federal pay and retention structures. The importance of further research before implementation. Comprehensive research and feasibility assessments are essential before implementing a free trade logistics framework. GDOE and Customs should jointly study trade flow modeling, infrastructure readiness, and workforce requirements to ensure that the legislation is data-driven and federally compliant. Conclusion: the establishment of trade and logistics zones represents a pivotal opportunity for Guam's economic and security future. adding a new article entitled Customs Oversight and Security for Trade and Logistics Operations to 5 GCA. Chapter 73 will give Guam Customs the statutory authority, the fiscal tools, and the workforce capacity necessary to manage bonded and logistics trade effectively. Customs stands ready to assist the legislature in drafting and implementing those amendments. Si Dios Masi for your continued partnership in strengthening our border and protecting our island, our people, and our resources. I'm available for questions at your pleasure. Thank you.
Si Dios Masi para Hagoloque, Chief Paris, and we appreciate your testimony and your input. So we'll now move over to Mr. Ed Camacho from GDA, and then we'll go to Matthew Baza from GDA as well. Please proceed, Ed. Okay. Identify yourself for the record.
Sure. Good morning, Senators. My name is Ed Camacho. I am the Business and Economic Development Manager for the Guam Economic Development Authority. With me, I have Mr. Matthew Baza. He's the Assistant Manager of the Business and Economic Development Authority for GDA. I asked Matt to come with me this morning. I'm having some issues reading nowadays, so Matt's going to read our testimony this morning on behalf of GDA. In general, GDA supports the intent of the bill to try to diversify Guam's economy, and we have been looking at a free trade zone, foreign trade zone for some time now, and other industrial parks that we see necessary to possibly expand Guam's and develop Guam's economy. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Baza to go ahead and read our testimony. Thank you.
Hafide, good morning again, Senators. Again, I'm Matthew Baza, Assistant Manager for Business and Economic Development at GDA. My boss asked me to read this, so I guess I should read this. So I'm reading testimony on behalf of our Deputy Administrator, Carlos Berdalio. Hafide, Senator Duenas, and members of the committee. The purpose of this letter is to provide written testimony on Bill 174-38 COR. Overall, the Guam Economic Development Authority, GDA, supports the bill's goal of diversifying Guam's economy through increasing new investment in Guam through export activities. Guam's unique position outside of the U.S. Customs territory presents opportunities to encourage new investment. Over the last few years, GDA has seen a marked interest in Guam from companies in the Asia-Pacific region due to our proximity to Asia, our status as a territory of the United States, and most especially because Guam is a duty-free port. Products and raw materials can enter directly into Guam from any country without tariff or duty. Because of this, coupled with the federal government's aggressive stance on trade and tariffs, Guam has received interest in potential investors in sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, aquaculture, technology, and more, as they explore different avenues of exporting products into the USA, potentially tariff-free under the Head Note 3A program. GDA has always served as the government of Guam's lead economic development agency. While interest in Guam remains steadfast, there are some barriers to investment, particularly for industries or investments of importance to Guam's economic diversification initiatives. The lack of readily developable, properly zoned land, both public and private, as well as a lengthy and sometimes cumbersome process to lease out public lands, has been a perennial hurdle GDA has faced when meeting with potential investors. Because of this, GDA has been exploring the viability of establishing a new, modern, industrial/development park on government property to serve as a catalyst for new investment. The provisions of Bill 174 appropriately contain the requirement to identify public or private lands that may be suitable for free trade logistics zones the bill hopes to establish. GDA currently does not have a readily available inventory of property, as both of our industrial parks are at virtually full capacity with long existing commercial tenants. The identification of appropriate land is crucial towards encouraging swift, responsible, and sound investment in Guam. However, GDA understands that the identification of land will require due diligence and collaboration from numerous Government of Guam agencies with variable missions and needs, as well as the private sector. Additionally, GDA has met previously with the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency regarding the bill and understand that they will be recommending some courses of action to ensure that their agency has the legal framework required to implement the bill's objectives. In a similar vein, GDA stands ready to work with the committee to have further discussions regarding potential tax incentives, real property identification, and other aspects of the bill. Lastly, we greatly appreciate the bill's goal of appropriating funding to GDA to undertake the tasks it lays out. Meeting the objectives of the bill will require the dedication of adequate staff and expertise and will more than likely require additional services from a consultant as well as other costs. It is crucial that the identified funding be made available so that we can fully realize the potential positive impact the bill is looking to achieve. Thank you again for the opportunity to present testimony on Bill 174. GDA stands ready to work with the committee and legislature as a whole as the bill moves to the legislative process. Signed, Carlos Berdalio, our Deputy Administrator. In addition, I thank the Director Pareto for testifying first. He talked about a lot of the things we have already been doing. We have done a transshipment feasibility study, and it sort of identified some of the challenges to transshipment and some of the potential industries, technology, aquaculture, agriculture, pharmaceutical manufacturing, other types of assembly. So that's something that we're actively looking at. And we also echo Customs' desire to make sure that whatever law that does get passed has the correct legal framework. GDA is not a regulatory agency. We are sort of an agency that encourages investment. But also as we encourage investment, we always tell potential investors that there's a whole slew of local laws that they need to follow. So if we can make sure that if this law moves forward, if the legal authority is good and Customs, it's something that Customs can readily implement and work with the potential investors, that's something that GDA, of course, would wholeheartedly support and work with them on that. So that's all. We're GDA here, we're ready to answer any questions as well.
And Senators, I would like to add there is a lot of interest in this area. We constantly receive investors from off island coming into Guam, as well as our trade missions, talking about looking at Guam as a pathway to the U.S. Because we're tariff-free. Well, if they comply with NO 3A, they may be able to get into the U.S. tariff-free. So there's a lot of activity. Developing a diversified economy and developing a zone for that would help out tremendously. Just wanted to add that to the testimony. Thank you.
Cedars Masi and Matthew and the members of GDA. We also did receive testimony from Department of Revenue and Tax, recognizing that they come after GDA in the hierarchy, and they made several recommendations that I know the committee is going to look towards in marking up this bill as we go forward. But we'll continue now with senators asking any questions that they may have of the panel. And I'm going to start with Senator Joe San Agustin. You were here first, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I don't have any questions. I'd like to thank the gentleman for showing up, Chief, and for GDA. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Cedars Masi. Senator Gumatauto, I have any questions for the panel on this Bill 174-38?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for the panel for being with us today. And I just want to jump right into this report that Matt talked about. And thank you for sharing that, because obviously when Customs says, okay, we need more study, but let's start with that one first. So that report on transshipment feasibility and economic diversification, as was prepared by David Matsuda of Matsuda and Associates LLC for the Guam Transshipment Task Force, that was published back in May of 2024. Now, just for the record, according to the report, from a transshipment point of view or perspective, goods can be sourced from different origin ports and then unpacked and consolidated at the transshipment port. The repacked containers are then shipped forward to other ports. This can include sea-to-air transfers as well as fishing industry shipments. This particular type of activity, as it was mentioned in the report, requires warehousing facilities within a duty-free zone or other limited taxation environment to avoid taxation on goods that did not originate from and ultimately are not destined for the transloading port. Additional requirements, as Matt mentioned, we talked about those land availability, infrastructure requirements that are outside of the port, labor resources and availability, identifying investors, which, as you mentioned, yes, they're coming and they're asking about it, and identifying customers on the other end. Now, an interesting thing from the report is that it noted that Guam recently wound down a robust fishing transshipment supply chain. Now, under the activity, commercial fishing vessels would bring their catch to the port of Guam for transfer to the airport, where the cargo would then be flown to market destinations. Data collected by that team in that May 2024 report through initial interviews indicated that the export of fish from Guam had been strong until 2021, when it was interrupted by a southward shift of the tuna population in the waters surrounding Guam. the market for Guam fish exports has since dried up, and Guam now faces competition from other fish exporting locations around the world. However, the interviewees in that same study noted that fish species other than tuna might now be available for export from Guam. So based or recognizing that report in 2024, which again was something over the last 17 months, it appeared at the time that industry interest in foreign trade zones, again, was lacking. What data is available today, or at least since the report's publication, confirming whether local industries are interested in pursuing paths towards free trade zones? Can anyone answer? Maybe Matt?
Most of the interest we have come from off-island. We are currently talking to a couple of companies right now. They are looking at bringing in product into Guam, using Guam as a staging place for cannery, and then shipping it out. They're also looking at fishing in Guam waters. So we're doing our due diligence now, introducing them to the proper authorities. When I say proper authorities, customs, they also wanted to meet with the Coast Guard and different agencies out the EPA, whether they can really do this. We are not the regulatory agency, but we're connecting the dots because we're very interested in what's going to come out of this due diligence we're doing right now. But there are a couple of companies, none of them that we're talking locally, that are looking at Guam as a staging area for this.
So when we think about countries, how many are we talking about?
I'm talking about two, both of them are from Taiwan, I believe. Oh, no, three, and one from Vietnam.
All right, thank you so much. And then on my only final question, Mr. Chair, with respect to a recommendation in the 2024 report for the Transshipment Task Force to work with the Port Users Group, the Port Authority of Guam, and the Guam International Airport to explore feasibility and perform a needs assessment for establishing a corridor between the terminal and/or airport with a potential bonded warehouse and one or more potential FTZs in Guam. What preliminary details are available regarding the footprint needs of a potential facility, perhaps near the Port Authority of Guam? And for discussion purposes, is it possible for such a facility to coexist with the proposed CQA satellite inspection facility while providing the agency with annual rent, which would be used for the inspection facility's debt service requirements?
So first, I can answer on the, when you're talking about the size, the scope, for GDA, as we've been discussing the idea of a new industrial park or a new development area, and when we're talking primarily for export, the first places we always think about is either the airport or the seaport, depending, because it just, for practicality's sake, that makes the most sense for a business of that nature. We're not privy to how much land either of those entities currently has that would be possible for that. We know for the case of like the airport, they always have to first just make sure that it's best used depending on federal requirements for the airport and all of that. But that is that if we're talking export, we're thinking the airport primarily or the seaport, and making sure that that sort of exists in a way. And I think customs can also see the potential in that, because in general, the airport and the Port Authority are already areas that have increased security, and customs has a presence there, and they would be able to sort of add on to that if there was land available. As we said in the bill, in our testimony, the airport, Port Authority, land management, you know, ancestral lands, all these agencies that have land, because we said GDA is currently out of land, we would have to reach out to those agencies if we're exploring public land, and of course we'll reach out to the realtors on potential private land as well.
And I add that we have been in discussion with the airport. They do have 25 acres we've been talking to them about for various different entities that have come to Guam. We're still in discussion, and we're reaching out to the Port Authority too to find out what can be done. We've introduced the port to one of these shipping companies, and they've had dialogue, but they're out of Dubai, so it's, you know, they may or may not come through for us. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the potential use maybe to expand, but keep in mind that we only have 4 acres. And so if you're going to look at a very scaled down operation, because the intent of the satellite inspection facility is for the Customs and Quarantine Agency to conduct much more tighter inspections, much more isolated inspections. And so when you're talking about creating this new economic area in which goods are offloaded, processed, and not given any tariffs, duties until it enters any type of commerce, we're looking probably at needing triple the amount of the acreage. And the only other way we can move is to move up. But even moving up, 4 acres is still almost very insufficient to be able to capture that type of operation.
All right, thank you for your responses. And I just looked this thing to Gita. There's a lot of plans that have been done over the last 3 decades. You guys should probably dust some of these off, especially with it in terms of how can we support bonded warehousing and the like. And there's so many ways that we can skin this cat. I think those would complement the current policy that's before us today. And I think that in it has also some land considerations, especially in and around the Port Authority. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Senator Gumatauto. We'd also like to welcome Senator Barnett this morning. Good morning. And now we go to Senator Chalahi for any questions or comments you may have on the bill.
Thank you all for being here to testify on this bill and for the work that you've done in advance. So just wanted to check, so with customs, you said in your testimony that this bill needs more research. You also proposed some amendments, and I understand the amendments and the authority that it changes to for customs puts it into your enabling statute. So those I agree with pretty much, but in addition to those, we would need also another bill. I mean, some of the provisions in this bill as well, or are you saying this should replace the bill?
I'm thinking that if you stick with the initial premise of the bill, but then have the sections within the same bill with the amendments that we proffer just as one bill. It would be an addition to, and then maybe the subsection would say, and there will be a new Article 5 added to 5 GCA Chapter 73 entitled, and then from there move and make all those subsections. That way you don't have to introduce another bill outside of this, because there is a nexus to establishing the regulations as necessary with customs.
All right, and have you attempted anything like this already under your existing authority?
Well, currently we're going through our administrative rules, and some of the rules kind of allude to us being able to do so, but if there is vagueness in the law and there's a chance to rectify it by solidifying through statute, we would like to see that materialize. Because if you take a look at the customs in any other jurisdiction in the world, and I'm going to use the United States, they have this bonding situation down to a T. They know what they're doing. With us, we've got a fragmented approach towards how customs regulations are created and enforced. And keep in mind that we were actually many years ago a port security division, and we were slowly growing. And with the United States Customs Service transitioning into the Customs and Border Protection, and since September 11th, there was sweeping changes which gave them so much authority and funding. And when you come back across the Pacific into Guam, you see that we're still trying to play catch up. We lose so many officers because of retention incentives that aren't really applied. We're trying to build up our statute. So any chance that we see to build up our statutory regulations, we're going to do so. And this is, we do things piecemeal because you can't do a massive change based on the amount of limited resources that we have. These are bite-sized changes that we can easily incorporate into our operating procedures.
All right, thank you. As to the research that you suggested, you were very specific, and I'm grateful that you said we need to clarify to what extent federal customs exemptions or thresholds, such as Section 321, de minimis, apply to goods re-exported from Guam. That's one. Another one is examine how the proposed free trade logistics zones would interact with or potentially conflict with the Foreign Trade Zones Act of 1934 and CBP's regulations under 19 CFR Part 146. How or when will we get the answers to those? And who do you propose is going to give this?
That's a very important question, Senator, and that's what we're concerned with, is that we got to make sure that we understand what those particular initiatives are and make sure that we incorporate that within the guidelines that we're trying to put together. It's very important for us to make sure that we don't overstep our so-called authority as it relates to the federal requirements, and that's why it's important for us to make sure that proper research is done and collaboration with the federal government in terms of establishing a customs bonded warehouse. Because they do have a saying insofar as the movement of goods coming in from Guam to the U.S. Customs zone. And if we don't understand that, then there's going to be a conflict on this bill. But that's where we're coming from. We got to make sure that we conduct the needed research to make sure that the initiative that we're putting forward solidifies the intention of the bill.
All right. So yes, I appreciate that. Are you able to do that between you and the federal customs, or do you have the resources to do that?
We can move forward in making sure, because we have contact with these people that are handling the bonded warehouses. So we can sit down and collaborate with them, and that's where our team will come in and work with them.
All right. Can you give us a time estimate on that? To get further clarification on these questions that you've posed?
Well, it's very easy to reach out to our counterparts here in Guam, but then it has to move up 1 or 2 levels. So the timeline I can't really guarantee, but I can reach out like today, right, and meet with the port director for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and then we can see possibly what the timeline could be. But all of this could be addressed in memorandums of agreement or understandings, and it just takes us having to reach out and move. But as far as the timeline is, it's all conducive on whether or not the leaders for CBP are readily available.
Okay, so this would be the beginning of that type of discussion. All right, and then so your amendments also call for, in addition to the appropriation to GDA, a $2 million appropriation to customs for this program, and fees that would increase annually that you can set for these activities. All right, and okay, if I could ask Gita, you said you had been in contact with some companies, including fishing companies, for this type of activity or this program. Have there, I know that they did studies on the transshipment. Have they done studies as to the jobs that would be created by these potential industries that you've been looking at as taking advantage of a program like this? Because we're giving tax incentives according to the program. You're going to be proposing gross receipts tax abatement in particular for the companies and for the products that come in and out, no tax, but and then a reduced real property tax, it says. But so I'm looking at the benefit for Guam looks like it's supposed to be jobs. So is there any study regarding the jobs that we are supposed to be creating by any of the industries that you're looking at? Like if we had to prioritize based on jobs, do you have that kind of data?
With the businesses we've been talking to, they do recognize that they may need to bring in specialty services. However, we never really got that far. The biggest issue with any foreign investment in the Guam is land. Over the last 10 years, that is the biggest hurdle we have, is when they come in, they want to do something, and especially these Asian companies, they expect a public-private type partnership where the government will give them the land, and that doesn't happen. And that is our biggest issue. In the last 3 to 4 months, there have been some big investments looking at Guam, but we can't provide the 50 to 100 acres of land that they were looking for. So there is a lot of potential investment coming to Guam, but it stems with the land. If we can identify the property and move forward on whatever this free trade logistics zone is going to be, I think that's going to help us market this thing. But it's never gotten past basically the land issue, because they're not going to do a lot of the research if they can't find land in Guam. And we're dealing with a lot of companies like that now, not just in this industry, in the agriculture and fishery industry, but in manufacturing, pharmaceutical, high-tech, low-tech. They're all looking for some type of land, and they're not looking for small land. They're looking for large parcels of land. And so we're recommending a private company now that already has 40 acres out there. So we're directing them over there, and that's exactly where this additive manufacturing went to set up their temporary shop, because there's nothing that we have in our property at GDOE right now. And dealing with the airport, we also try to lead them over to the airport too.
And then, Senator, if I may add, so, you know, when you're talking tax incentives now, really the vehicle that it's going to go through is through a qualifying certificate, because the legal framework's already there for the issuance of a qualifying certificate. It's given out to eligible industries in meeting investment and employment requirements. And manufacturing is already eligible for a QC. So if someone came in tomorrow and said, I've done my due diligence, I'm going to open a factory for, I don't know, something, to make shoes, let's use that as an example. You know, then we would say, okay, these are the current benefits that they would be able to avail of would be an income tax rebate, a property tax abatement, and a limited tax rebate on dividends. But as a condition of the QC, they would be required to maintain a minimum number of employees based on what they say their employment needs are, and GDOE saying, okay, we're going to hold you to maybe 100% of that amount, or maybe 90%, just in case as the business ebbs and flows over the year, plus other requirements that may be assessed to them. So the QC law, in which any added incentive for this would flow through, already mandates maintaining employment requirements. It also mandates certain training programs. It mandates that a percentage by an initial point of the QC, that 75% of non-managerial employees are U.S. citizens or permanent residents, understanding that if it's a foreign direct investment, they may need to bring in some temporary labor, but then it mandates training so that after 2/3 of the QC or 10 years, I think 90, if not 90, 100% of all the employees are U.S. residents or U.S. citizens or permanent residents of Guam. So those are already built into the QC. So any new incentives that were added would fall into that, and it would be a negotiated thing in the contract if a QC is issued by the governor for an investor.
So you're suggesting that we keep the same rules for this program as in your current QC manufacturing program, that there be no unique rules for this customs-free zone?
I would say that, I mean, the most appropriate avenue of the tax incentive being provided to the business would be through a qualifying certificate. You know, also if they're going to, and if someone's coming in to manufacture a product and then wholly export it out of Guam, it's not entering the commerce of Guam, so it's not really subject to BPT because it's not being sold in Guam. They have to report those gross receipts, of course, but it's not subject to the gross receipts tax. And then really the only vehicle that the government of Guam has to provide a tax incentive on income tax is through the QC, because the Guam's tax code mirrors the Internal Revenue Code 100%, but the QC is an existing law. So the only way to provide a tax incentive on income for the business would be through a QC. Okay,
well, this bill doesn't even mention a tax incentive on income. Mm-hmm. It talks about the BPT. Mm-hmm. It creates this as a separate program, mm-hmm. QC, with BPT on the goods coming in and out, as mm-hmm. you said. They could do that already. And BPT on gross receipts of the operators, mm-hmm. and then the real property 50%. So if there's going to be income tax, I think that should be reflected in here, that's what we're also waiving. And that's why I'm asking again about the jobs, because mm-hmm. I think this is the incentive for the government, right? To create this program, to do all this work. We're going to be funding customs annually, GDA annually to keep these programs up. And we are waiving taxes, so what is the jobs that we're going to get, the amounts? And so I'm asking, in those studies that were done by GDA for transshipment and the other industries like pharmaceutical, were there analysis on the job potential, the number of jobs?
I will say the transshipment study, one of the first challenges that the potential investor is facing is having qualified employees already here in Guam. So there would be a need for them to bring in some temporary labor, either through an H-1 visa or an H-2 visa, if they were so eligible to bring them in, number one. Or maybe if it's a US-based business, bringing people in from the States to run the company initially. When GDA looks at workforce development and potential for job creation, we look at it based on the business. I will say that we've had different businesses come in to doing similar things, whether it's a fish farming or a farm. Depending on the type of farm and what they're looking to grow, they could say we need 50 employees, or they could say this type of produce only requires 7 employees. So a lot of it is really on what they're looking to do and how they need to appropriately staff that. I will say that since we're talking about the qualifying certificate program, the QC law is very explicit. It says that no QC shall be issued unless it does 2 things. One is creation of employment. Creation of employment is mandatory, and GDA has always looked at that as the creation of new direct employment by the investor, not secondary like contracting. They're going to contract out with someone to do work for them. No, we're talking direct employment, new job by the investor, plus one other thing, either reduction in consumer prices, replacement of imports, creation of a vitally needed facility, or economic activity of value to Guam. So, and then the law also, the QC law does require maintaining certain numbers of employees. So each contract is signed off on. They need to maintain a number, and we look at the business plan, what their revenue stream looks like, what their expenses look like, whether it looks like it makes sense. And definitely what we would do in a zone like this, if something like this were to be established, is we would maintain all those statistics because, I mean, we receive regular reports on that as well. So that is how we would look at it in terms of the number of jobs. The transshipment feasibility study didn't really go into the potential for the amount of jobs. It just said it had the potential to create jobs. So as the investments come in under that, we would look at that on a case-by-case basis.
And Senator, the pharmaceutical feasibility study is still undergoing right now. It hasn't been completed, so we hope to see that. We've met with the contractor who's working on the study, so we hope to see the results of that. They've already met with us.
All right.
But I may want to add one more thing to this. A benefit that may help this is the use tax. When these large companies bring in equipment to use for they're going to be paying a use tax for everything that comes in. So through the QC, there's only, I think just a special hotel QC, right? Is the only benefit, only QC that has a use tax benefit. This has been brought to us on many occasions. Am I going to be taxed on the equipment? If I bring in a $5 million worth of equipment, do I got to pay the use tax on it? Currently, you have to. There could be a possibility that we come to you to modify the QC, and it's going to be an exchange for the investment, depending on what it is. But we would have to do the complete analysis first. That's something that's brought up every now and then.
All right. I'm very interested in weighing, if you have you're going to set up a 25-acre industrial complex, maybe that's all we've got right now, but you set one up, how are you going to prioritize the industries that come in? If we're giving all of them these tax breaks, but yeah, our incentives are only use tax or jobs. I really think we need to have an analysis of the potential jobs for potential industries so we can prioritize the ones with the jobs or the better jobs for our community. And okay, and then in your testimony you also mentioned that GED has been exploring the viability of establishing a new modern industrial development park on government property to serve as a catalyst for new investment. I think we've been hearing this for as long as I've been an adult. So how long have you been exploring this, and where are you in exploring it? whether it would be viable, I think is not as important as, well, it would be depending on what you put in there, right? I mean, if you're just getting rent, then it's viable. If that's all we're going for, rent, that should be viable. But if you're going for jobs or something more for the investment of the people of Guam in this property, then I think that's where we need analysis. So how far are you on this industrial development park on government property to serve as a catalyst? Do you have anything that if they were going to dedicate land to that you're going to show what the benefit would be? For example, the airport has all those acres. They keep saying they're going to make tons of money for all of us through there, for the airport at least. But no studies. We've seen nothing. Do you have any?
Senator, you're absolutely right. It's been a while. We are in discussion with the airport as well as with land management. We've had a couple of meetings with land management trying to identify land that would be suitable for some type of industrial park. This was brought up to us by investors too. You know, they need land. It's very expensive to work with the private sector out there. So it is in its infancy right now. There's more attention to it given to it now with our new CEO, and we think we're going to be driving a lot more harder to try to make this thing happen, whether it's in parallel to the free trade or this is what it's going to be. We just don't know yet because there's a lot of interest out there now, and I think it's important for us to move forward on something, and this bill may be the start for it.
And I think the scale of the potential job creation, the scale of the amount of investment will be contingent on when we sit and meet with these land agencies of how much land is available and where it is, and is it something that's more readily developable. So, you know, if we're able to secure a large piece of land, then of course we would really drive to get the investment and that commensurate amount of jobs to support that. The dedication of public land for that purpose, because we do understand if public land is going to be dedicated for that purpose, one, the lease terms need to be, of course, appropriate, right? Where it's conducive for the investor, but also safeguards the public interests. And that if tax incentives are provided, that the requirements given of them to maintain jobs and make other public investments in the community are maintained and reasonable. But the scale would, of course, I think, when we say land is crucial, is because we'll know how much we'll also know what kind of businesses to sort of look for on the scale of the land that we can obtain if we're using public land. If we're given 20 acres, then we know that we're going to attract this business of a certain scale. If we're given 100 acres or if 150 acres, if that's available, then we can sort of gauge who we're going to look for, and also prioritizing which industries. If land is not as available, we will prioritize industries we feel would be most impactful for job creation and also the environment and also the economy as a whole. Because we're also keeping in mind now that the environment needs to be protected, so making sure that the land is in a place where industrial development can occur and be safe for the people of Guam is crucial for us as well.
All right. Can I just, my final question is, what is the difference between this bill and what you're currently authorized, enabled to do, GDA?
I would say with GDA, we have already been doing this, especially since COVID and especially since there's been increased interest in the Asia-Pacific region for different types of investment in Guam. Pre-COVID, we were a tourism-based economy, right? So, you know, everyone coming in was looking at hotel development, tourism, retail, things that supported our tourism industry. And, you know, we know GVB is working very, very hard on that. So on this diversification initiative, this has really become something that's become important for us because the interest is actually coming to us, especially from countries like Taiwan, Korea, Japan, our main target markets anyway. We can do QCs now. If, you know, a business can come in today and open up a factory to do manufacturing and receive a QC and take advantage of Head Note 3A with them working directly with U.S. Customs. Now, we do see some potential that if something like this were formed and it's more collaboration with Guam Customs, which provides more collaboration with the federal government, that there could be some potential in expanding sort of this investment where products can be made in Guam and enter into the U.S. tariff-free. Having something like this of more security, more Guam Customs oversight and collaboration, like the Chief said, with MOAs or MOUs with U.S. Customs, might increase the potential for that to happen a little bit easier. So it would supplement and certainly support GDA's already under the mission we're already undertaking with this.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Mr. Chair.
Here's my Senator Jalahi. Thank you very much. Senator Burnett, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, and good morning to the people of Guam and Anasidos. Happy Monday, if that's possible. Thank you for watching on our YouTube stream and on Docomo and GTA channels. And again, good morning to the panel, the Customs leadership that's here, as well as Mr. Camacho and Mr. Baza. I find myself supporting the intent of the bill, like many of you, as it seeks to expand our economic diversity and development. But I think just based on what I'm hearing, it's very obvious that we need to do a better job of working together on deciding what industries we're going to push for, because we'd hate to end up in a situation where, for example, we have the one hand pushing for something like pharmaceuticals, but then all of the other entities that would be responsible for the job training and making sure that we have our local people who could fill these jobs are doing some other type of trade training. So, I don't want to create an economic free trade zone and then have it be populated by a bunch of H2 workers, because then for me it becomes kind of a pass-through and our people don't really reap the true benefit of it, and neither does the government of Guam. And so I think that's just the first thing is there has to be that collaboration in identifying what is realistic in terms of creating employment for our people, because we all know our people are leaving the island because there aren't jobs that pay well enough for them to afford the cost of living here. So that's one. And then I know that we've done this before with the watchmaking days, and that the CNMI garment industry has done something very similar. Obviously, you don't want to mirror the garment industry, but I'm just thinking that with the bill and the concerns that Director Prado and the Chief brought up, a critical omission, the lack of fundamental authority, which globally is inherent to all customs administrations. This is the authority to regulate bonded warehouse, sterile areas, trade facilitation zones. Is currently drafted. The legislation assigns these crucial responsibilities to GDA, and as you said, Mr. Camacho and Mr. Baza, you guys are not a regulatory agency, and so I appreciate that Director Prado, you and your staff have submitted a bunch of amendments here. In fact, there's about 15 pages of suggestions to the bill. And I know you were being nice and saying that you don't think we should zooty the bill and that we could, possibly the committee will get it in under the same number, but for all intents and purposes, it does kind of seem like it needs a major rewrite. So I kind of just wanted to start there. I know you covered it briefly in your testimony, but what are some of the risks of embarking on this type of venture without having that customs oversight and authority, which again, in just the cursory research I've done, that's kind of like where you start. If you're doing a free trade zone, you start with customs having the ability to oversee and enforce.
Thank you for that question, Senator. So you can boil it down to its simplest form. If there is no oversight in that area, obviously you're going to have a tremendously high level of risk. And if there's no regulatory entity in there to ensure that the area is sterile, I mean, look around you. Based on other things that are going on, based on the number of officers and the application of current technology with customs and the laws that we have in place, the narcotics interdiction that we're doing very good with the very limited number of officers we have. And so if you're gonna put this in context with what we're currently doing, we need around $2 million just to start up operations in a new area, because then you're gonna need to hire additional people, equipment, supplies, technology, and we need to modernize. We're piecemeal moving towards that. And with the staff of 125 officers, and we constantly have an issue with retention, what we're going to do is we're going to hire people just to leave us for CBP. So these are the things that we need to take care of. But going back to the level of risk, it's like when the cat's away, the mice will play. So if there's nobody in there doing the regulatory aspect for customs on behalf of the people of Guam and to protect the interests of Guam and the United States, you're going to have a free-for-all. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and given the challenges and the struggles that our island's already facing with crystal methamphetamine and other drugs, that's I shudder to think that. I mean, it's Halloween, but you know, I'm trying to be spooked in here, but that's pretty scary, Chief.
Thank you.
So how important, you know, what Mr. Camacho was talking about working with the feds and being able to engage in funding opportunities, how important is that for you guys to do?
Okay, so it's not that difficult. It's not difficult to do because we already, and I'm going to go back. So the port director for the United States Customs and Border Protection operations here in Guam is a former customs officer who did the same thing years ago. He's a friend of ours. So reach out to him. He's the port director, the GS-15 guy. And we also have connections with people in Washington. But the first step that we have to do is we have to reach out, talk about what our plans are, and then identify through some type of draft agreement what we plan on doing. That's not difficult. It's when it gets to the higher levels on signing these agreements where we might run into some challenges. But on the face of it, it's not difficult at all to try and reach out.
But the bill, as it's written, if you were to take this over to your federal partners, they would basically say, can't sign that?
No, not in its current form, because it doesn't talk about the regulatory authority. And they're going to pull out their 19 U.S. code, and they're going to say, do you have this, that? And all our answers are going to be is no, 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 no. What we're trying to do from our end is we're trying to build up our statutory authority, and now that this is being highlighted as an interest point, we need to also address the concerns that we present before you today, which is to tighten up on our regulations as it relates to the free trade logistics zones and the bonded warehouses, and any area that's going to be operating as an extension of the customs agency.
Can you talk a little bit about go ahead, Director, did you have something? No, only Mike?
I was just going to say more about the collaboration with the federal government, especially CBP, what we want to do with this particular initiative, because it's identifying that we need a bonded warehouse. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually create our regulations in line with the U.S. Customs of how they manage their bonded warehouse. And I think that's very important for us, because that way we can ensure that whatever we do, it's in line with the federal government.
Thank you. Can you go over the $2 million? What would that go towards?
Okay, so $2 million would go to investing in technology and modernizing. It would go to the acquisition of critical equipment, go towards x-rays, non-intrusive inspection systems, personnel, training, drug detector dogs, the whole gamut. And with that being said, you also need to talk about the security of the area, the CCTVs, the development of the different inspection areas and stuff like that. Of course, that's the initial cost. Once we get all that in play, then I'm pretty sure that the amount of money that will be used to operate annually will be cut. And then we absorb that as part of our operating budget, and then we recalculate and address it through our maritime and air cargo fees or passenger inspection fees to be self-reliant, and the fees that are collected through the bonding process and the licensing of personnel and the actual facility itself.
Sounds like more than $2 million. So, you know, you talked about, if the bill passed as is, the risk to the potential importation of illicit substances onto the island. But if it were to pass with the amendments, and let's say the $2 million appropriation was in there, what are the staffing, do you have an idea what the staffing requirements are going to be? And then how would that impact operations at the other ports of entry? Because one thing I've learned in just discussing a lot of the issues facing customs is, as we've seen the number of customs officers decrease, and the retention and recruitment also face challenges, we've seen the amount of crystal methamphetamine and other illicit drugs coming onto our island increase dramatically. So if we put this into place, I know you guys, you're not Matutuda officers, you guys are actually short now, right? So how many officers do you have now, and then what's the ideal number?
Okay, so the ideal number is anywhere between 200 and 300 officers based on our current operations. And we currently have 125 officers. And then with this new requirement, it'll take between 25 to about 30 officers to man the new facility for the foreign trade logistics zone. So with that, we're going to be adding now to be like almost 300 to 320 plus officers that we're going to need to man all the ports of entry and all the different current operating stations and all the specialized areas that we need to man that are currently not manned, and we're I guess underfilling, using different positions because we have to. It's a necessity. It necessitates us that we do that because we don't have the personnel resource. So it's just going to add another additional requirement. But it goes back to what I said earlier about if we don't have any retention incentives in place, we're just going to be a conduit to federal employment.
Thank you for that, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to ask questions. Sidus Masi again to Gita and Customs. Thank you very much for your very insightful testimony, and I hope that the committee takes it into consideration.
Masi, Senator Barnett. Author of the bill, Vice Speaker Ada, any questions and comments, and then closing on the bill as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't have any questions, more of comments, and perhaps, I think this is what it's about, right? Bringing everybody to the table so that we can see what we can do to diversify our economy. I mean, we only had two legs of our economy, tourism and military buildup. Now, we've seen tourism drop over the past several years with COVID-19, and now as we move forward, we don't know where this military buildup is going to go and how long it will last. They say 5 years, some say 7 years. But I think it's prudent for us to start looking at ways to start to diversify our economy. And by doing this free trade logistics zone, I believe everyone coming to the table, we'd be able to start working these things out, planning it out, and as we move forward, then as one industry comes down, we can perhaps start building another industry, which would be this trade logistics zone. And I appreciate all of you guys coming here to the public hearing, and this is what it's about, right? We create this legal framework as we continue to move forward, find out what it is that local customs, federal customs, how is it that GDA will be able to come into play and see what investors are looking at. And that's that's a telltale sign when you have investors looking for you rather than you looking for the investors. Unlike tourism, we're looking out there, we're spending $10 million to go bring tourists to Guam, versus people are looking to invest in Guam, and you haven't spent a dime to do those things. So, I think keeping an open mind and keeping how is it that we can work together collaboratively to ensure that we strengthen this bill as we move forward, and hopefully that we come out with a product that is going to be for the benefit of the people of Guam, whether it be for the government or for the private sector, but the island will benefit overall. So that's what we continue to look at. And Mr. Chair, I look forward to having a markup meeting on this, and perhaps we can bring the stakeholders back to the table, see what their input is, see how we can work collaboratively and move forward with this legislation. But thank you for having this public hearing, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi as well, Vice Speaker Ada, and I share your observations. I mean, many of the questions, and thank you, Gita, for being here. Thank you, Customs. I've centered around truly the discussion on this issue for decades, basically. But it seems there's been no catalyst to actually kind of move it along and move it forward. I mean, the interest of foreign investment, you know, we've been seeing and hearing about it, like I said, once again, for decades. We think we may have gotten over some hurdles by indicating that the properties of which you speak are going to require longer lease terms. So I guess it's baby steps. You know what I mean? We've tried that now, and we see we got several incentives set forth with regard to that now. But it's going to be meaningless if we don't update our regulations and update what we're allowing for by law to do it, other than just a plan and a portfolio of our Economic Development Authority, which, you know, they do a lot of wonderful stuff that they're doing right now. I remember back in the 31st, I believe it was, a senator that introduced a bill to try to capture the ability of our island, because we have a very good source for generating honey, and to try to get you know, opportunities to export. And so we know we see a lot of honey producers right now on Guam and the like. I mean, we've always been trying to do something to get some sort of export, something going out of Guam to where we can, you know, build our products and have something, you know, an industry on Guam that allows us to produce different things here. And now manufacturing is huge. I know there's an individual working on the possibility of assembling drones on Guam and the like. So we got to keep looking, because if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we get. So I appreciate the author for this bill. And yes, the committee is going to be very active on this. I think what we'll do, Chief, is we'll look at merging the recommendations regulatory-wise, and then kind of truing that up, and then we'll have the markup on that. We might need an additional one as well, but we'll bring all stakeholders together, and I'll work with the chairman. Yeah, you know, he has the rules committee and this hall. And so more than likely it would be productive to just bring everybody back to the table when we have a substituted product. But we won't put a substituted product on the floor. What we'll do is we'll go through it and make sure that we've done what you've requested to do today. But barring not seeing any other bill having been introduced to try to get this going, I'm going to work with this bill. And we're going to make it better, and we're going to make it a final product for the floor. But before that, I know the author and our committee will do our due diligence. So with that, that will conclude the public hearing on Bill 174-38. So we will continue now on the next bill on the agenda. And thanks once again to GDOE and Customs and all the support team that has come out too. I'm sure they'll be vital as well to helping us mark the bill up, particularly from Customs. Thanks, guys and ladies. So the next bill on the agenda is authored by, once again, Senator Joe San Agustin. It's bill number 156-38. It's an act to amend 58104B2 and 58106, all of Chapter 58, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to authorizing the extension of lease agreements under the Guam Education Financing Fund, GEFF, and to finance the capital improvements and modernization of the Guam Department of Education, GDOE, facilities with $59,370,000. And so at this time, I will turn to Senator San Agustin to introduce his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to also recognize the co-sponsors of the bill. We have Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes, Senator Vince Bora, Oversight Chair of Education, Vice Speaker Tony Atta, Senator Will Parkinson, and yourself, Senator Chris Reyes. Mr. Chair, Bill 156 is another out-of-the-box thinking piece of legislation. As the title says, it has the potential to achieve up to $59 million for the Department of Education to address the multitude of challenges they face relative to maintenance and capital improvement. To accomplish this, it is the goal of this measure to authorize the extension of lease agreement with the Guam Education Finance Foundation, or GEFF, for another 15 years through October 2041. The current lease with GEFF is for DOE schools, which are Ukadu High School, Astumbu Middle, Liguan Elementary School, and Atacao Elementary School. A great part of this measure is that the 15-year extension will not cost the government more than what the debt service is annually. Today, the debt service will remain at a fixed $7 $6,005,000 per fiscal year. In this bill, we will allow GIF to monetize the extended lease payments through lease-backed bonds, certificate of participation, or other similar financial instruments. The proceeds will yield revenues that will be allocated to DOE for the following. One, $55.7 million to fund modernization, HVAC improvements, structural repairs, safety upgrades, and other capital needs of GDOE facilities and temporary classroom of Simon Sanchez High School. $7 million to GIF for equipment assets and custodial infrastructure to support facilities maintenance over the extended term. $7.3 million to fund capitalized lease payments for FY 26 and 27. $3.2 million to fund debt reserves, and pay underwriting and insurance costs associated with the finance mechanism. Mr. Chairman, we had several bills before us that address the dire needs of appropriate monies to DOE, but the reality is that it's not enough, and changes in the way the federal government allowed the use of federal funds have caused major delays of completely halted projects for DOE. So I look forward for all the testimonies in support of the measure, for it will help accomplish a multitude of issues that our public school system has been working so hard to improve. Thank you again for hearing this measure, and thank you all who are here to provide testimony. And Mr. Chair, if I can, I'd like to read GIF's testimony, written testimony submitted.
Yes, Senator, I'll allow for that. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. This is from GIF from Mr. Wilson, the Treasurer. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 156-38, COR. During this public hearing, my name is James Jamie Wilson. I'm the Treasurer of the Guam Education Financing Foundation, Incorporated. The entity responsible for administering the lease-back arrangement that have successfully supported the construction and maintenance of key Guam Department of Education facilities, including Ukadu High School, Ostumbo Middle, Liguan Elementary School, and Atacao Elementary School. Over the years, our leaseback model established under Public Law 28-47 and refined through Public Law 30-182 and Public Law 33-94 has enabled essential educational infrastructure without imposing new taxes or direct government borrowing, while maintaining fiscal responsibility. When Bill 156-38 was introduced on June 23, 2025, it was a response to a critical uncertainty. The U.S. Department of Education had abruptly accelerated the deadline for spending American Rescue Plan funds by a year, March 28, 2025, effectively freezing Guam access to approximately $108.8 million in pandemic-era funding allocated for public school repairs and modernization. This left GDOE with a reliable mechanism to advance urgent capital projects such as refurbishment at F. Bilyang Guerrero Middle School, George Washington High School, and other facilities, including HVAC improvements and resolution of temporary classroom at Simon Sanchez High School. The original bill sought to address this gap by altering the extension of existing GIF lease agreement to generate approximately $59,370,000 for these improvements through a proven lease-back financing approach. However, recent developments have significantly altered this landscape, as reported in the Pacific Daily News on July 5, 2025, following a June 26 letter from U.S. Education Secretary Linda McMahon, and confirmed in a virtual meeting between Guam education officials and U.S. DOE representative. Guam has regained access to the full $108.8 million in ARP funds, restoring the original extension deadline to March 2026. This reinstatement is a positive step, with about $96 million specifically earmarked for school refurbishment and air conditioning repairs. Critically, though, the funds are now administered on a strict reimbursement basis. GDOE must first front the cost of invoices and then apply for federal reimbursement, typically with a 4-day turnaround. Guam Education Board Chairman Angel Saban emphasized that this shift allows for local funds to be used up front, creating a revolving fund mechanism to build timing gaps without immediate impact on the general fund. Senator Vince Bora and Senator Chris Duenas, yourself, Senator Duenas, have also expressed support for establishing such a revolving fund to ensure efficient, transparent progress on projects like core tech, refurbishment, and school repairs. While this federal update ends months of uncertainty, it does not eliminate the need for front-loading financing. GEOE still faces potential cost flow interruption as it must identify and deploy internal or local funds to pay vendors before seeking reimbursement. This is where the leaseback extension under Bill 156-30 remains essential, but the bill must be amended to align with these new circumstances. I respectfully urge the legislature to adopt amendments outlined in the markup version of the bill proposal, dated August 26, 2025, which refines the financing structure to better accommodate and integrate with the reimbursement model while maximizing flexibility and fiscal prudence. Under the markup version, the bill would authorize the extension of GIF's lease until 2041, leveraging the substantial equity accumulating in these facilities to generate approximately $73 million through a lease obligation or other financial instrument. These funds will finance critical improvements across GDOE facilities with $55 million and $70,000, including $7 million dedicated specifically to upgrading your 4 GIF schools. Importantly, this extension maintains the current annual base lease payment of $7,500,000. The same debt ceilings historically established under GIF 1 and GIF 2, ensuring no additional strain on GDOE's operational budget. The amendments in the markup version also introduce key flexibilities tailored to the ARP reimbursement framework. For instance, the refunding and lease extension could be structured as a pay now, reimburse later model, allowing eligible expenditures to advance under ARP and FEMA authorization. Lease financing documents should specify no prepayment penalty if ARP or FEMA funds allocated to GDOE are used to pay down obligations early, automatically adjusting the $7 million debt service ceiling downward based on the reduced principal then outstanding. Under the prepayment option, the annual lease payment would be reduced depending on the amount of ARP and FEMA funds used. The final term of the lease extension could be reduced from 2041. And additionally, including 2 years of capitalized interest as part of the financing would eliminate the need for GovGuam to appropriate lease payments during the capitalized interest period, avoiding any immediate impact on general fund and keeping annual commitments within historical norms. These provisions mirror successful precedents from prior legislation action, such as the regional leaseback under Public Law 28-47 and the refinancing under Public Law 33-94, while upholding fiscal prudence by avoiding new taxes or direct borrowing. Historically, GIF has performed capital maintenance for its facilities, and this extension would continue that role without increasing GDOE's lease obligation. By adopting the markup version, the legislature can accelerate the delivery of needed projects, prevent cash flow disruption, and ensure that Guam children benefit from modernization schools without delay. In conclusion, while reinstatement of ARP access is welcome, the reimbursement-based administration necessitates a robust local financing bridge like the amended leaseback extension. I strongly support 156-38 as amended per the markup version and stand ready to assist in its implementation. Thank you, Senator Duenas, and to all members of the Committee on Finance and Government Operations for your leadership and thoughtful consideration of this measure. Zeus Masi, James Wilson, Treasurer, Guam Education Financing Foundation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Zeus Masi, Senator San Agustin. And so I look to see the panel has already come up forward. Thank you for your due diligence. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? We have an extra chair. If not, then we'll proceed with the superintendent, and then I'll go to Mr. Wade Paul, and then we'll just go through and have everyone else introduce themselves one by one and their testimonies. Superintendent Swanson, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Senators. The folks that you see in front of you are the end users of the GEFF product, and that's where we have some serious concerns. I do know that you should have in front of you the packet that has the official testimony from my office and also correspondence from each of the principals that were involved. That was all solicited by BBMR, and they presented a very accurate picture of the situation. As I say at this point, good morning. I am present today to offer testimony regarding Bill 156-38. In essence, I support the bill, but with reservations. We all agree that there is a significant need to renovate or modernize nearly all of the GDOE-operated campuses, and that is an expensive proposition. Our most recent Corps of Engineers studies put the price tag at well over $500 million, adjusting for inflation. This bill is an effort, as I see it, to engage existing assets to generate cash to address some of those facility issues that we face. And for that, I'm grateful. When asked to provide written testimony from the GEFF schools on the content of this bill, there was unanimous pushback and response from the building principals themselves, the end users of the facilities, and the contractor retained to perform maintenance and upkeep. In a nutshell, the response was do not extend the lease, continue to pay and receive substantial support and maintenance that has been well documented. Our collective experience has been one that continues to be that maintenance and insurance have been underfunded throughout the lease. Storm damage from Marwar goes unrepaired because GEFF investment team cannot afford the cost and there was no insurance in place. On all 4 campuses, we have had to expel local funds on facilities owned by the lessor in order to be able to pass health inspections. The contractor did not and does not have the funding to support the work that is needed. After working through the development of Simon Sanchez project, we discovered that the leaseback arrangement from JFK High School to be an ideal arrangement that does provide the necessary level of maintenance to be workable and a desirable model. Developing that model for solicitation for the new developer at Simon Sanchez was a deliberate and painstaking effort to ensure that the product will supply the quality and the community deserves over time. The 2 models provide much more detail for maintenance, staffing, insurance, and contractor performance. If we can build into this legislation the standards of quality paralleling the ones for JFK and Simon Sanchez, then I can support moving forward with the bill after more detailed language requiring similar results. The current language extends the lease, generates only 10% of the cash needed to adequately fund the facilities renovation across the district and extends an inadequate level of maintenance at the 4 GEFF schools. I do not believe that this is the intent of the sponsors of this bill. I recommend further work on this idea in the effort towards an ultimate goal of providing quality school facilities for all of our community. And I invite you to ask specific questions of each of the 4 principals here and also Mr. Paul. Thank you.
We certainly will. Mr. Superintendent, thank you. Do you folks want to go to a question and answer, or do you have your individual testimonies available? I can start with Wade Paul, and then if you'd like to let your testimony be heard first, and then we can go to the questions.
Good morning, Chair and Vice Speaker and Senators. I don't have anything to add other than this to Dr. Swanson's testimony. We have the initial part of this bill talks about the problem we are having with paying our ARP bills. We have internally resolved that, and we're all caught up with paying our ARP bills, and we don't foresee any issues all the way up until March when ARP's liquidation period ends. That's all I have.
Please identify yourself for
Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Administrative Services, Morgan Wade Paul.
Okay, Ms. Gutierrez.
Good morning, Senators. I'm Hannah Gutierrez, principal of Estimbo Middle School. I did have the pleasure of serving as assistant principal when John F. Kennedy High School was open also, so I did have the experience of being under 2 different landlords. And I do agree with the superintendent that moving forward, I do support the bill, but with reservations. Currently, the $7 million annual budget is not sufficient. I've been the principal for 5 years now at Estimbo Middle School, and my colleagues will agree that every year we're told there is not enough money, and much of the work is done by either our staff and also the Department of Education. If you're not aware, my school did not return after Typhoon Marwar. There were many issues with the building even before I took over the school in 2020. When I walked into the school, I'm going to say I was very embarrassed to be the principal there. I came from Agania Heights Elementary School, one of the oldest buildings, schools here. That building was in much better shape than what I inherited in 2020. And a lot of, we're told there's not enough money. The building is not even painted. When I took over the school, Dr. Flores was the current principal at the time when I took over, but we had many discussions. It's not to her lack of as a principal. Many times just the issues of it being told, again, they're not going to do it. And a lot of deferred maintenance when the typhoon happened, I believe. It's not always typhoon related. It was a lot of deferred maintenance that was not addressed. Deferred also the timely manner, things that were broken, it takes months to get fixed. I know that the image and the picture of it being a lease school that we're spoiled and that things get done in a timely manner does not always happen. Currently we're struggling too with even grass cutting. Much of the time our parents have to volunteer, much of the time our staff has to volunteer and come out to get the grass cut. Relationships have grown and been better in the last year, I agree. Also another issue I want to point out, I know Dr. Swanson pointed out the JFK relationship that we have with DOE, a much more thorough lease. I believe it's a very professional relationship that we have. There's service schedules, whether it's the short-term maintenance or long-term planning. I do have a strong relationship still with JFK. I was just there Thursday and Friday, and I know the flooring of the gym was just redone. That was done in a timely manner. My colleagues and I, we've talked. It takes a while for, again, I think Dr. Flores will talk to you a little bit about the gym. It took over 2 years for her to get an answer on work that's going to be done. And again, this is the safety of our students, the image of our schools going forward. I have to be honest and say that DOE gets a bad rap a lot of times when we don't come forward and get this work done in a timely manner. The public health inspections, a lot of it, the work, we had to ask DOE to come forward because the landlord was not fulfilling their duties to get the schools ready. A lot of the work, again, was done. After Typhoon Mawar, I had the help of Anderson Air Force Base to come in. The Sergeants Club up there did a fundraiser through PTO. We worked together. A lot of funding came through them too. A lot of just even buying paint. 1 bucket of paint couldn't even be supplied to the school. My staff, my teachers have come forward to buy the paint, to paint the school. So again, I just want to say that moving forward, I do support it. But again, the $7 million annual is not sufficient. If moving forward, I believe we do have to tie in the cost of inflation. I'm not an economic person or a business person, but rate of inflation, right? As years goes on, we know after the pandemic too and the typhoons, a lot of the cost of the building costs has astronomically gone up. Factor those types in. Again, maybe if the money's given directly to us, I'm not too sure if that's the best way to go. If we could do a better job at handling our money and putting the money where it needs to go. Another question too that I have asked, I'm not too sure, and maybe this is something that we have to do in-house, right? The payment, I get told a lot that we don't see a lot of the payment that's being done with the landlords, that it goes through the governor's office. So moving forward, this might be something, I'm not too sure, that I've been told a lot. Is this something that we can better the relationship? I'm not against it again, like I said, but maybe bettering the relationship with the company. Another issue we found is we don't really have a local representative here. So sometimes that relationship is very hard. Who do we discuss? We're the end users. And sometimes it's a struggle with trying to communicate with the landlords to get things done. Right now too, with the maintenance, the company that's assigned for custodial and the maintenance, sometimes they're not able to fulfill the duty, and when I do speak to our local representative who's designated, I get told to speak to the contractors there, and I don't understand why, if they keep telling me they can't get it done. So moving forward again, maybe the maintenance should go out for bid to someone who can be held accountable. I've been there 5 years, like I stated, and nothing's changed. We continue every year to have the same person, the same company there. I don't know if it's a payment issue or a lack of commitment or communication, but I just get constantly told by the contractor that they can't do it. there's no money, they're not going to do it, it's not in the scope of work, but it's clearly out there in the agreement that we have with them. So moving forward, as a principal and being able to speak for my community, I would like to see some changes to the bill. That way we can better serve not just our schools, but all DOE schools and also our kids, because at the end, we're the ones that are getting shortchanged with it. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Monsi, for your testimony, and that's why we're here today. So we'll definitely, I want to hear the rest of the testimony. I've heard different stories, and I've been to a couple of different schools. I guess maybe when I was there, things were going well, and then I hear other stories. So this is why we need this process. I know of course, from our perspective, we're trying to make sure that we can keep a financing scheme or have a financing scheme that works, particularly in light of what we were experiencing just a few months ago. But definitely, we need to flesh it out and see, if we can salvage it going forward. But without your input, we would not have known to go this direction. So, ma'am, I recognize you at this time. I didn't. Free fire zone.
Apologies, I was going to defer over to Dr. Flores. Yes.
Hi, Rita Flores, principal of Okudu High School. And so basically to add to Ms. Gutierrez's sentiment, I'd just like to add a layer of assurance, right? So that's technically what I feel that's needed to keep the principals involved and ensure accountability. Because in regards to the maintenance, the cleaners are fine, at least for our school. We do have a positive relationship recently with not recently, but the cleaners are fine, but it's the maintenance, like the HVAC, the ceiling tiles, the leaks. So at one point, the GEFF liaison, Mike Alvarez, had to hire an outside contractor to address the leaks because I kept, the current maintenance will go up there and then it leaks again, and then we're constantly having to send in another work order, and so finally he got somebody from outside to come in and fix those leaks. But the main thing again is to just add a layer of assurance. Ms. Gutierrez mentioned earlier that maybe if we had somebody outside. Right now what I do is I now add facilities and maintenance when we send in a work request, so that at least GFS knows that it's not just a principal, someone else outside has that notion of what we're requesting. She mentioned about our gym. Back in July, I know Lester from the governor's office had asked for our principal's input, and I've shared back then that GEFF didn't have, they were being unresponsive at the time. Since 2023, I've asked for them to look into our gym floor because it's uneven, and it eventually, it will become an unsafe zone for kids to play basketball. Right now, it's an even spot in the middle for volleyball, but for basketball, we're unable to play this quarter sport basketball for this particular school year because it's uneven in some areas. Public health has also shared that sentiment. But finally, I don't know if Lester, by sharing my sentiment to the governor's office, has contributed to this, because I've shared this in July, and just in August, our concession stand also has now been addressed. So GEFF has hired CU Construction, and it will now be done in November. So two big ticket items that were really hard to get a response on was the concession stand and the gym. The gym flooring, I was just told that the repair proposal was just received last week Friday. So now it's under the review of Mr. Wilson. But again, maybe someone, or maybe since the funding is coming from the governor's office, I don't want to bridge DOE, but maybe DOE and governor's office can get together to say, hey, what are your concerns that you have with them? Because either way, I believe they're getting paid. All right, that will be my assumption, because we don't know what's being paid to them. At least for me, I just was told it's coming out of DOE. So DOE we don't know about the funding source there, but maybe some sort of collaboration and assurance so that things can move a lot faster, and then they can do some, rather than waiting to work on big ticket items. Another issue I have is, they didn't have typhoon insurance, and so to this date we're still, functioning with the field with no lights. And recently we have AC units, thankfully, but some of the things from the typhoon is still not done, and they didn't, from my understanding, is they didn't have typhoon insurance, and so they were pushing it back to DOE. And so just some things that need to occur with GEFF. Yeah. So, they didn't want to, I believe it's going to cost so much money that they didn't want to repair the ACs. And so I had to go to DOE and say, hey, what can we do to help our students? Because Typhoon malware has come and left a couple of years, and we were still struggling. Just recently, this school year, we finally got through the help of DOE. And so, do they respond? Yes, to small ticket items, big ticket items. I just recently got a response from them, and DOE helped out with the AC units. So there is a big reservation on going with the extension. But if there is some sort of accountability that they know of that's on top of their head, knowing that, if the principal signs off or doesn't sign off, some sort of work order, then they know that they won't get paid, so that it pushes them to get the job done. So basically all I'm asking is that we need to add an additional layer of assurance with accountability. Thank you.
Cedars Masi. Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Johansson Pulling-Bayan from League One Elementary School, principal. And I do agree with my colleagues here and Dr. Swanson and my higher-ups that, I do support the bill with reservations also, as well as we are struggling right after Mawar. So during the Mawar, we were really struggling because they were like stagnant. We've asked for help based on all the ceiling tiles that were damaged, leaks, mold, HVAC. I mean, luckily, again, we are in good relation with GEFF, and they do the small ticket items. Luckily, they were able to fix the HVAC units, so that way we were able to open the school. However, throughout the years, we submit work requests. They come by, they just assess, but we don't know how long, the completed repairs will be. So there's no turnaround. The turnaround, we don't know when it's going to be completed. We just wait, and then when we do ask, they do ask, okay, we don't have enough funds. Can you go and talk to maintenance? And we do. Luckily, they're able to fix some of the big items. I did request for sinks because with public health inspections, there are required sinks in the classrooms. And I asked GEFF if they could do the sinks, and they said, no, we don't do that. It's not in our contract. So I asked facilities and maintenance, and they were able to do it. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But along also with the carpets, after Mawar, all the carpets were damaged, and I asked also GEFF if they could remove the carpets because of the mold, because of the safety of all the students, the employees, and whatnot. But they said they couldn't do it, so they were able to just vacuum, and that wasn't enough for us, so we had to move some of our students to other places in the schools. But again, yes, I do agree that we have to ensure the accountability. And also, if we are going to do periodic installments, that if we could get schedules of those payments, so that way we know and also the schedules of the turnarounds, you know, like when are they going to do the big ticket items and so forth every time we make that request. So we just want to be in the loop. We just want to make sure that we have good relationships and that all the principals that are end users are in the loop of what's going on. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Sidus Masi, I'm going to go to Wade Paul and Mr. Swanson real quick here just to get some, oh, sorry. I thought you were going to defer. You're ready now. Please proceed.
Apologies. Mahafide, my name is Mabon Kenko, and I am currently the principal at Atacao Elementary School for the last 38 days. So I've had my share of experiences with the contractors and GEFF. To be honest, we recently had a meeting this week because we are forward planning for our upcoming public health inspection, and it sort of ties into what my colleagues have been discussing over time. Everything has kind of spiraled and connected in some form in terms of what is expected. In working with our former principal, Mrs. Chargloff, she's also, congratulations to her, she is retired. We did share communication and comments in terms of refinancing and the huge investment that's going to go into renewing our lease agreements. The main talking point as far as that hasn't been yet mentioned was maintenance oversight. One of the big things that is entailed in the custodial services with GEFF is that they don't include daily classroom cleaning, daily. It's very limited in terms of, and the contract says as needed or once a week. At the elementary level, that is very, very unsanitary and unsafe. On a daily basis, we do need our classrooms to be cleaned. The contract, as it states, says that it's the responsibility of our teachers. Please understand that that is very taxing to our teachers. The priority in our schools is supervision for our staff, the safety of our students, and of course the health. More importantly, instruction and teaching is what our teachers do. And so as an advocate for my school, or as the administrator of my school, how can we better adjust the services that we need on a daily basis for our classrooms? Yes, on a daily basis, the bathrooms are being cleaned, the urinals are being checked, the hallways are being cleaned. We do have a good working relationship with GEFF. However, there is a need to increase daily classroom cleanliness in every classroom, and not just once a week, certain areas of the school, which ties into maybe back then when this was first drafted, we weren't really looking at the expectations of the public health inspections. We are at that point, and fortunately, Atacao does have an A, so we are one of the blessed schools, only because our teachers and our staff, along with the support of our GDOE maintenance team, we have had to reach out to them. Just like Ms. Gutierrez mentioned, Atacao also was not in their building for almost 2.5 school years because we had to work on the different parts of the campus that needed to be repaired after Mawar. Fortunately, we did have support from our teachers, the staff, and our maintenance division to get the hard work done that we needed more support of. So we were able to go back to our campus, and we're just now seeing the everyday, daily results of teaching and learning in our classroom. However, we need to be able to match the expectations of the public health inspections to what the contract is asking for. And one of those specific areas, really at least for us, is ensuring that we have a team of custodial services on a daily basis throughout the school day and not just in specific hours, because on a day-to-day basis, our students are trained already to report, Ms. Nkenko, there's no soap in the dispenser. Ms. Nkenko, we ran out of toilet tissue. Ms. Nkenko, there's a leak. And so with those things in place, it takes away my staff or my teachers or even myself, right? We diligently go and we try and figure out how to replace those things, learn to use the soap dispensers, learn to replace and clean urinals if we have to, but it has to be done on a day-to-day basis. So that would be something we seek support from in terms of this renewal as well as this big investment.
Sidus Masi for your testimony. Superintendent Swanson and Mr. Paul, so obviously this payment schedule being managed by the governor's office through DOA, Do you report to DOA and the governor's office the concerns that the schools have been expressing here in terms of up to the governor and to DOA so that they could possibly, work on withholding payment if there's not adequate in terms of what the performance is?
Over the course of my tenure here, we've had several conversations with the governor's office, with her legal counsel, and also worked through the GEFF group through Mr. Wilson, trying to get a handle on all of this. And I would say, to a large part, there's willing to have a conversation, but to see any substantive change, that really hasn't come around. I'm at a point looking at the scope and the level of non-compliance with their contract, which, by the way, has been very difficult to get our hands on, to see what was actually agreed to 20 years ago. That's been a challenge. So it's almost to the point where we're looking at, do we litigate this? Because they are not supporting us in the way that we need to be supported. And that's why I've brought our folks in to do the work, because the work still has to be done. The kids are still there. In that group of 4 schools, that's nearly 4,000 of our kids. And we need to take care of them well. Those are facilities that, if they're maintained well, can be really a high-quality example of what it can be. But we've had a real struggle with that, and we continue to work on it.
So the answer is yes, you've run that up.
Yes.
To the
yes, we have.
To the front. Okay. Senator Agustin, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, hearing the testimony from the principals, I support exactly what you're asking for. But we need to remind ourselves exactly what Dr. Swanson brought up. This was 20 years ago? And probably none of the principals were principals then. And unfortunately, back then, they didn't participate because DOE at that level, the superintendent level, was doing it all with the governor's office. But I agree with every principal here. You should be involved. And maybe we'll figure out a way how to amend the bill so it meets that. It shouldn't be just DOE management, but it should be at the principal, and maybe the maintenance guy should be the one to double check it for you and say, they fix the HVAC and whatever. They settle what you needed, because you're right. You shouldn't have to do what you've been doing. And if there's a lease back, it should have been fulfilling the needs of the students. You meet the students, you automatically meet the staff, you just keep going up the ladder. And I'm in agreement with that. Just a simple question for somebody in finance, Mr. Paul here. And the other lease schools, such as JFK and Tizan, has there been an increase in the maintenance budget for them? That were when they started, they had a set amount, then all of a sudden it just kept getting more money?
Senator St. Augustine, the JFK lease runs us $7,677,890 annually.
Just JFK, right?
Just JFK. And so they do cover all the maintenance, all the cleaning, changing light bulbs, etc. So just that one school is even more than what these 4 schools are, what the proposal is in the bill for the payment for the 4 schools.
Okay, and how about for Tizan?
Tizan, I don't have the data on.
Okay, and when it first started, the lease with JFK, has that amount been increasing annually or whenever they ask? I mean, it's quite obvious. The other 4 schools are not getting the same support that JFK is getting. Yeah, and I'm an alumni of JFK, so I'm happy with that too.
It has been increasing, but not annually.
Huh?
It has been increasing for JFK, but not on an annual basis.
Okay, I'm just concerned about that because exactly as one of the principals brought up is that $7 million may not be enough. If it's good for one high school, it should be something to consider for all the 4 schools. But we also have to be reminded that, if I'm correct, DOE was not the one paying for the lease. It was a compact impact, if I'm correct. I mean,
that's correct.
And if that's the case, and that not being there now, it's a different ballgame. So the lease back would have to coordinate, and I agree that we need to amend the bill to make sure that we fit the concerns of the principals, because it goes all the way down the line to students. But that they be included, not even as much as whoever the superintendent is going to be is going to end up signing on it, but there needs to be a mechanism that the principals, regardless who the principal may be for the next 15 years, but the principal has to have the checklist. Should be the one saying, yes, it's being repaired. Yes, it's in a timely fashion. Yes, they're being entertained. And the maintenance folks need to be part of that program too, because obviously back then, I don't think anybody was involved but the superintendent back then in the governor's office. And that's the change. And like I mentioned, this is just thinking outside the box, finding a way to help the schools and then help the schools in general. Because when these principals move to another school, they're going to be saying the same thing. Hey, can we get the same help that we got at this school? And this is another source of funding. And this money can be in a revolving fund, just keeps rolling, and help the schools. And with that, I thank you all for being here. And I appreciate your I read your testimony before I did my opening. I'm like, let me just cover this. And I agree with you ladies. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Senator Agustin. Yeah, one of the things I want to note in terms of the written testimony for the markup version of the bill is when we looked at this and the opportunity, because you keep mentioning big ticket items, which I completely understand, you know, those are obviously with the age of the schools, those are CapEx that any facility more than likely is going to end up, particularly having gone through the storm, that the whole discussion about the refinancing is generating the revenue for that, because this was even in contemplation of all the schools when the ARP money was held up. So, you know, as we go forward, I believe we can continue to assure you, but we'll have to work through this, that that's what the revenue would go to, would be truing up everything in terms that needs done. That would not be a perennial big ticket item anymore. But yeah, it might be that it's not adequate, and we're going to have to work on that and see whether what that does to, you know, whatever proposal going forward. But definitely will generate a lot of revenue, and that was the whole purpose, was to make sure that we could get caught up on everything based on the financing, because that money's going to come from somewhere, whether it's a new arrangement or whether it's under this arrangement. But it sounds like the structuring is going to have to definitely be improved. So we'll continue on with Senator Gumatauta.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel for being with us today. And I just got to say that it was very disappointing to hear the testimony and read it previously to this hearing. Just a little bit of history. Back many moons ago, I was actually I should say that Governor Camacho had asked us at the time for each one of the special assistants to shepherd a school, to kind of watch it from start to finish. So mine was Attica Elementary School. To be able to be there at the very beginning, to watch it get constructed, to be there at the very end was absolutely very thrilling then. I know that this coming year is the expiration of that contract. And it has been absolutely jaw-dropping and very disappointing to hear over the last several years of this contract that it actually, all the terms and the maintenance of these schools have gone down the drain, which is very, very disappointing. And we set aside the compact impact use for a second, but to have contracts that, you know, we have agreements that should be honored. And when I was at the judiciary, I mean, I was part of the team that helped Hannah, and she's right. Again, Heights Elementary School is in much better shape today, and since then, over the last 7 years, remains in better shape than any of the new schools that have been supposedly maintained over the last 20 years. So again, I just want to express my disappointment in hearing some of this news, not just recently for this hearing, but just over time. And again, just 9 months in this, 10 new months in this job, and again, just scratch my head. Based on the recommendations, if I can, or GDOE's recommendation for the Guam legislature to appropriate $7 million to the school system for maintenance requirements once the leaseback payments conclude. To what extent has GDOE's Facility Maintenance Division assisted the 4 schools with projects that really should have been the responsibility of GEFF during the last 3 fiscal years, and how much did GDOE pay in the form of personnel and non-personnel costs to support each of these projects at the leased schools? Do you have an answer for that, Mr. Wade?
I don't have the exact figure, Senator, but I know last year when we were trying to open up the schools, and this year, our maintenance team guys, they were at these 4 schools, getting the schools ready for inspection. You know, that bill, the maintenance bill runs us, including salaries, and runs us about $8-9 million a year for all the schools. That's what we're using out of the legislature's funding to take care of the schools.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's for a point. I think that as we start to look at this bill and looking how do we support our schools, I know this is focused on, you know, perhaps the leased schools, and that's why the 4 principals are here. But I think in the markup process, and I'm not on the committee, but I would, you know, look at how do we help the other schools. I would agree with that. But thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time, and appreciate the input of the principals that are here. Thank you so much.
Cesar Sumasi, Senator Gumitato. Vice Speaker Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the principals for being here and testifying on this legislation. I think we've been back and forth at this, Dr. Swanson, months ago about the contractors not performing their duties as stipulated in the contract. With the principals, is anyone keeping track or tab of how many man hours, how many supplies and equipment that is utilized on a daily basis that the contractors are not fulfilling in maintaining your schools? Anyone?
So the system that we have at our school, just like Dr. Flores mentioned and some of my other colleagues, the custodial part is done pretty well, the cleaning, but the schedule, you know, of course that's in-house, maybe we could work on that, but the big ticket items, yes, we maintain it, like the lack of, sometimes the leaks in the walls, the windows, the roofs, and then also the grass cutting. That's just been a major issue, just they can't even cut the grass. But we do have our own system of how we monitor it all. I know you use like an Excel, yeah, the Google Drive, they do. We do emails, but there is accountability and there is a record of how we all keep it at the school. We run it.
Well, that's good to hear, so that you can, you know, push that up the ladder so that everyone can know exactly what you guys are spending, both in man hours and supplies and equipment for maintaining the schools that are supposed to be maintained by these contractors. It's unfortunate that it has fallen to such a state of, I wouldn't say disrepair, but, you know, that it's coming to the end of the contract now, and the schools are going to be turned over to GDOE in a state that it should not be. You know, it should be in a state where here's the keys, now it's your facilities, we maintained it the best that we can, and now the responsibility is on you to maintain it. So I agree with you that perhaps maybe we need to look at something to see how we strengthen the verbiage in the contract to really hold them accountable. And I hope that, you know, Dr. Swanson, that moving forward and, you know, hope get a lawsuit, whatever it takes, so that we can get reimbursed all the money that has been placed into maintaining these leaseback schools, and put that back into GDOE so that GDOE will be able to, you know, not lose any funding from that. Other than that, you know, I look forward to seeing how we can continue to help all the schools, and hopefully that come up with a solution that will be that we can all work on together, because I don't think, you know, they're robbing the taxpayers of Guam is what it comes down to. And I think that that's unfair both to GDOE, to the principals who are at these schools, because you are under the assumption that when we call, something is going to be done, these issues will be taken care of immediately, and we just go forward from there. But when you have to take your own time, your own effort, your own expenses. I mean, it's bad enough teachers have to put out in the schools for, you know, whatever it is, air conditioning, fans, hand sanitizers, whatever it may be. But that should not be the case. And I think we need a better accountability of how it moves forward. And we need to hold their feet to the fire. You know, just like we hold, you know, GDOE leadership, we hold them accountable. We need to hold our contractors accountable as well. You know, we can't put all the blame on GDOE, but, you know, partial we have to, because when accountability is brought up the ladder and then it falls somewhere between the cracks, we just have to address it. And it's not to say we're looking for weaknesses, it's looking for a better way to strengthen the process so that we don't have to repeat this again, and that we move forward and helping each other, both the legislature and GDOE with these things. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't have any questions.
Susmasi, Senator Ada. Senator Chalahi, you're recognized.
Thank you for all of your testimony. It is really refreshing to hear directly from principals in here. So I'm very glad that you all came, and that superintendent, that you were open to that, because they're not always. And that we are hearing directly from you, particularly regarding the condition of the schools. I don't know, the more I hear, the more outrageous it seems, and really makes me angry, I have to say. I have so many questions. First of all, so in the testimony of DOE, you're pretty much saying that you have settled your issues with the ARP, how you're going to get that done, and that we do not need this bill or any bill to take care of that one issue. To take care of the schools going forward, I know that you came forward in the budget process telling us what you need to take care of the schools going forward, and that you are planners, and so that you have made potential plans for these schools being returned, and that your maintenance of the schools also has to include those, right? And I know you were disappointed we didn't fully fund those. And I think we should look at that again. I can't see from the face of this the benefit in going with the same company without any further incentive for the people of Guam, the students of Guam, or the schools. This is just a financing scheme, and it seems if we really want cash right now, then we should go for that, and we should get highest bidders. If we want maintenance, then we should go for that, and we should make sure that that's going to be what we really get out of this. But given all the issues that you've brought up, it does not seem likely to me that we're going to get it. I was going to ask if anyone knows the officers of this Guam Education Financing Foundation, Inc. Somebody said all the reps are off island. There's no local rep.
There is a local rep, Mike Alvarez. He's
Okay.
the GEFF liaison.
All right.
He's the maintenance subcontractor.
Oh, he's a subcontractor. Yeah. All right. Because this is really, we're going to be paying them, this company again, this lease payment for an extended period while we have not resolved the underlying lease or contracts disputes that we might have. I am very disappointed that Gita's not here. Gita is normally the one who walks us through these refinancing and shows us the financial benefits. And of course, we want to know who's going to be the one negotiating this contract based on this vague language in here, and that who's going to make sure that we get something more precise that you can enforce better than what we're able to do right now, right? If that's the issue, and you're saying that's not even clear between DOE and the governor's office. The governor, yeah, we're paying this out of general fund, so we put it in our budget. We allocate that before we even allocate for DOE, and that no one's looking at that or questioning after, especially the typhoon and everything that came up after the typhoon and all the issues that were brought up by the principals during the inspection periods as to whose responsibility it is to do what. I don't understand, honestly, why principals have to call these contractors up and not your lawyers. not even your lawyers. It should be the government of Guam's lawyers, because we're paying this out of general funds, taxpayer money, every single year without question, without demanding accountability. That's a huge gap. So I wanted to know more about who's going to be writing out the requirements for this contract, because if we go with what's in here, then I would say no, because we can get cash in a better way. We can do financing if we want. It doesn't necessarily have to be with this one company who's, whether if we have questions as to their accountability or our ability to enforce contract terms. It looks like it's even existing contracts that are going to be extended, not anything new, that we can require new things. And I just wanted to point out some things, or question some things. So these problems were brought to light after the storm, for sure, after Mawar. For sure, it was questioned, whose responsibility was it? Why couldn't we get the contractors to do these things? Why weren't they insured, right, for typhoon? Why, during inspections, was it not their responsibilities to make sure that we had what would meet public health standards? And they said because the contracts were executed prior to that, they got occupancy permits, that they were free and clear of all other responsibilities. Well, we don't want to repeat that. JFK, we're paying $7.67 million total lease payments, but 2.15 of that goes for maintenance. So in all of these contracts, there's specific maintenance that we're paying. So I guess I was just curious, $2 million for maintenance is adequate for JFK. And this one, it sounds like, to be honest, it's not really clear to me how this is going to be divided, but it looks like they're going to give you a lump sum to deal with for all those 4 schools that we're mentioning. And so when we first do the refinancing, you're going to get right away $56,000 for maintenance. Wait. $59,000 for $59 million for HVAC improvement, structural repairs, safety upgrades, and other critical capital needs of GDOE facilities. This is not really spelled out, and I think would absolutely need to be if we're going to proceed. And then you get that, and it says, up there on Part D, it says capital maintenance, repair, and upkeep shall be paid on a periodic basis as incurred by the contractor on terms to be agreed to in the contract for each education facility. So that's old language from the old statute. So these contracts already exist. So you would have to review those contracts to see whether you want to proceed in this type of way, that what they're going to fund, what is modernization, what are HVAC improvements according to that contract. The $7 million GEFF equipment, assets, and custodial infrastructure necessary to support facility maintenance over the extended term, even that, I would think you would want that spelled out before any support is really given to anything like this. Because the rest of the money, the $6 million, goes to the company for lease payments, and then we're going to be paying them $7 million annually. It doesn't really say in here, unless you're getting this $59 million up front, and you're going to divide how that's spent. Is that your understanding? Well, it says generally how it will be spent. Again, if we are paying $2 million for JFK, and you're saying that their responsiveness for maintenance is adequate, is good, then we can get that $2 million per school. I think if you divide one of those amounts up, it's 1.75 per school. It's a little less.
Wait, correction real quick. Wait, didn't you say it's $7 million a year for JFK alone?
No, that's a total, but the maintenance is only 2.
Right.
Debt service and maintenance.
No, the lease payments, yeah.
Yeah,
The lease payment annually is 7.67 million.
Including maintenance.
And I cannot confirm that, Senator. I'm sure it can include some.
Yeah, we need to get our figures
Well, I
straight
checked the
here
budget.
because, yeah.
So in the FY26 budget, JFK 7.677890, and maintenance comes out of there. It's 2150290. That's JFK. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so just for the record, that's lease
5.5.
back money and maintenance.
Yeah,
money, right?
5.5 for the lease back alone. All right, but when you say you're looking at lawsuits, how have we been looking at this since the Typhoon Mawar results, or how far along are we at this litigation?
If we were to go that direction, my intent would be to recover the cost that we've gone through in the last several years. This contract was set up 20 years ago in a whole different fiscal environment and with different parameters. What I put in my testimony was that, and this was with regard to the JFK model, in the work to prepare the Simon Sanchez lease arrangement, we used the JFK model and updated the numbers because of the difference in square footage and that sort of thing. That model has proven to work under the current situation that we are now economically. So that 2.5 million that's there for maintenance at JFK would be a similar number as Simon Sanchez if we're able to close the deal on that. But we see that as a real workable model, and to extend a lease contract arrangement with the GEFF group, we'd have to get into that kind of a model that actually acknowledges what it really costs to maintain a quality facility. And if you go look at JFK, that's working really well. The CAFA group has got that figured out, and we're trying to replicate that.
Yeah, I support that. Can you help me understand? The principals are saying they're being told due to budget challenges by the contractor, they can't proceed with the work. Due to not enough funds, I don't understand that part, they can't proceed with the work. What does that mean in your understanding?
I can tell you what it looks like when I talk to Jamie Wilson in Atlanta.
Who's that?
He is the go-to guy for the whole GEFF group. He
Okay,
is
go ahead.
their financial advisor and investment banker that's handling this. He doesn't have enough surplus from the income that comes from the government of Guam to put more in the budget for that purpose. So they've put a cap on it. And there's language apparently in their contract that lets them do that, but that's what basically has told me is that's all we can afford.
Per their own cap,
Right.
or per our contract? That's all they're,
And that's
that
what
all we're entitled to, or all that they can afford?
That's what we
It's
still
very
have
different.
To, we still have to clear that answer up. But the point is, when they tell the principals they don't have the money, that's the message that they're getting from the group.
I know. Well, that's the number one thing I would challenge. Why does the contractor get to tell you when he has or has not enough money versus what is he required to do for us? Right? It sounds like we can't be deciding on this level whether it's enough money that he has. It's whether we had negotiated that in our contract or not. And you're saying you're unable, even at this time, to get a clear answer on that.
I can't get clarity on that in the contract as it currently exists.
And so your new contracts are better negotiated?
It has to be better deal.
Yes.
Going forward, or
yeah.
Don't sign me up.
Yeah, so maybe that's the bottom line, is that if we're going to proceed in any way, then we would need the ability to renegotiate those contracts as to what maintenance actually means and what insurance is going to be covered and things like that. So that more of the details, so that it looks better to for your implementation. And you did, right, Mr. Superintendent, plan with your facilities crew to division, your brand new division that you're increasing to cover these schools if they are returned, to take care of them?
Yes, and we also have to acknowledge too, the price of doing that work is increasing steadily as well. So we have to be, it's a tough challenge to try and figure all of that out. And I know that the legislature is trying to do its part, but we're trying to identify clearly what has worked, what has not worked, so we can put tools in place to do the job appropriately for our kids.
All right. Again, thank you for bringing all these issues directly to us, and thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I hope you can get the level of direct reply that you need from the governor's office as to these contracts and our ability to enforce them or negotiate them if anything like this if any refinancing is proposed, or what is the benefit of going with the same company versus bidding it out. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Talai. Senator Burnett, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Paul, and also good morning to our principals. I also want to say good morning to the Facilities and Maintenance Head, Mr. Jimmy Pangilinan, and Leah Beth. Good morning on you, Guam Department of Education. And thank you for coming in to provide very crucial and critical testimony on this bill. I want to thank the principals also for sharing the frustration that I know the superintendent and his management team have also shared, because as the former chair, we're in conversation about this contract, and we're in conversation about how when it was negotiated, I believe way back in the Camacho administration. I'm not sure if my colleague Senator Gumatato had a hand in negotiating the contract, but obviously it was flawed from the start. So I don't know what we're doing here, trying to rubber stamp a renewal of this contract, which, you know, according to the principals who are overseeing the schools under this off-island company, they're not getting the response they need. Oh, wait, you are, so they are responding now, but maybe that's because, they got a bill here in the legislature, and maybe they were told, hey, respond, fan, and we'll get the bill through. Because it doesn't make sense to me why we would continue. What's the definition of kaduku? The definition of kaduku is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So this contract has been in place for 20 years, and we've been seeing the same thing over and over again. So I don't know why we're going to continue to do the same thing over and over again when this contract expires next year. And then, Mr. Paul, if you could, or Mr. Superintendent Swanson, if you could, what does that mean when we say that this leaseback arrangement will expire next year?
It means that the contractual relationship with the GEFF group closes out, and everything that becomes ours. And we've tried to look at that, even using some of our ARP funds under the condition with US Ed that this is a lease to own arrangement. So if I use some money for that, is it okay with them? And they gave me at least a verbal approval that that was okay to do. But for example, just to reopen the Stumble Middle School, because most of the air conditioning was damaged and removed by the wind from the roof of the building, we put in a little over $300,000 worth of new air conditioning in the building so that it could reopen and get the kids back on campus. So what does it mean? It means whatever shape it's in, we own it, and title reverts to the Guam Department of Education and the government of Guam.
And so essentially it will end the relationship, the problematic relationship that you currently have with GEFF and these schools under the leaseback arrangement.
That's correct.
Okay, so without this bill, we'll be done with GEFF next year. That's why they're trying to put this bill through.
And I would consider also, don't forget that the legislative body has already attached a dollar amount to that, and we still have to step in behind the cost and fund the money that it takes to do the work. And we're looking at not just 4 schools, but right now 40 campuses that we own. They all need attention. Some of them are 60 years old. They need a lot of attention. To give you an average, the 12 campuses that are under the refurbishment contract, which is not a complete rehab, that's a very specific targeted work, is averaging $8 million per campus. And we have 40 of them. And high schools cost a lot more than elementaries because they're way bigger.
But what we're seeing, and I'll agree with Principal Gutierrez, is we're seeing the schools, in many cases, that are being managed and operated by the Guam Department of Education do better with the public health inspections than we're seeing the leaseback schools. And I'm just of the opinion that, you know, instead of addressing this bill, I think we need to send GEFF a bill for all the hard work that GDOE's Facilities and Maintenance Division has been doing, work that they should actually be doing according to the contract. And so I'm not even sure what we're doing here, just based on the principal's testimony. You know, in this body, one thing I've noticed is we like to say, oh, thank you for your testimony, thank you, you know, for coming and hearing, and then it's in one ear, out the other. Similar to the budget. You guys told us it's going to be a disaster for the Guam Department of Education. Law might pass anyway, you know? And so these principals are here telling us in black and white that this relationship is not working. DOE has an opportunity to be free and clear of this relationship. Next year, we have an opportunity to take that $7 million and inject it back into GDOE for the further maintenance of the school. I mean, you even have a co-sponsor whose name is on the bill saying that this entity is, quote, robbing the people of Guam. Robbing the people of Guam. Those are strong words coming from a co-sponsor on the bill. And so the words have been said a couple times by my colleagues up here, financial scheme, and I think financial scheme is exactly what this is, and I would go even further and call it a scam, because clearly there are other options. You know, I support the option that we just end the relationship, we find a way to fund, you know, give you that $7 million, we continue to support the growth and expansion of the Facilities and Maintenance Division so that DOE in-house can handle the facilities and the maintenance of the respective schools. That's one route, which I support. The other route would be if this relationship with this entity, by all accounts, is not working, then we scrap it and we put it out to bid and we let GDOE determine who is going to do the best for GDOE. Because right now this contract being stuck in the purgatory of the governor's office, it's not doing the Guam Department of Education any good. And I think as we look for the solutions, we have to allow GDOE to move in the ways that it wants to move. And when they come here and they tell us that, hey, this is not working, you know, we have to remember we don't work for GEFF, we work for the people of Guam. We work for the children of Guam. And so when you come in here and say this isn't working, I'm just not comfortable with all the GEFF apologies that are going on up here in this panel. We got senators up here doing backflips trying to defend this relationship and this contract, which I absolutely will not do. So I oppose the bill, and I think that we need to listen to GDOE. If anything, the two options I would support are we end the relationship and we move forward from there. Or we put it out to bid and we ensure that the public schools and the public school stakeholders, the public school students get the absolute best deal for the Guam Department of Education. So, Sidos Masi, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on the measure, and thank you again for your testimony. Just a word of advice, though, when you come out, and it sounds to me like the very consistent theme in all the principals' testimony is you are opposing the bill because of the inaction, the non-responsiveness of the landlord. But when you say things like you may support it if we amend it, that just encourages these guys. And so I think rolling this over through a piece of legislation is not the way to go. We have, you know, processes for that to ensure that the people of Guam get the best deal. And I think that's the process that we need to go through. So I don't know, it kind of sounded a little wishy-washy, but just reading between the lines and even obviously the black and white of your testimony, you don't support the bill and you're worried that we're going to end up doing the same thing over and over again for the next 15 years under GEFF. Do you agree, principals? Yeah? Don't get in trouble now. But thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Masi, Senator. Senator San Agustin, you'd like to close on the bill? I'll
Yeah,
have just a couple questions.
Real short close. You know, principals, I support your discomfort, what you've been going through. But at the same time, I introduced a bill to find a source to find help you. Not make comments on and insult anybody, but to find ways to help you. To make any excuses for anything, that's shame on you yourself, not on me. Trying to find ways to help you guys. And if you find another separate arrangements you can plan, may God bless you. But when you start telling me JFK costs $7 million and we've been paying for 4 schools $7 million, you really know there's not a matchup. You need to figure that out. And previously, the funding was through compact impact. Doesn't exist anymore. So when DOE's management team, soon to be changed, comes before the legislation and says, we need money, think outside the box. Want to take care of the schools, not make excuses for our failure. We need to take care of the schools. And with that, Mr. Chair, I look forward to in the direction, whatever the committee wants to go, and I will support the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Susan Masi, Senator, and I concur with you. We're used to some of the theatrics here, and some of the language. But when this bill was proposed, and I need to ask you this direct question, Wade, Paul, and Mr. Superintendent, you don't have cash even if you receive the schools transferred to you, right, to go in and fix everything?
To fix everything in their current state? No, Senator, of course not. But I would like to say that the amount we intend to pay on this lease would go a long way over the next 15 years of taking care of capital improvement projects, if we can just set aside that money for DOE capital improvement projects.
Certainly, but you would have to do some CapEx in order to bring the schools up, and you would be financing and funding that with the same funding source, correct?
Well, I don't know where the funding source currently comes from to pay the lease.
It comes from the general fund.
Right.
Oh, it's going to come from the general fund because the funding source that it was originally designed under no longer exists in terms of the way the federal government treats Guam now, in terms of that funding source that we used to get under compact impact. So if we're appropriating
comments about this bill, my idea was, or the soup's idea also was that $7 million can be used to fix projects in all of our 41 campuses. Every year. I understand that.
Mr. Paul, right now you're expending $104 million or $107 million of ARP funds that the spigot got turned back on for. Mm-hmm. That's for the repair of all the schools and the projects that are identified by your team, right?
12 schools, yeah. 13 Correct. Schools altogether, including
13 schools altogether. And so my statement to you is that is money under ARP, that if you didn't have ARP, you'd be in the market to
Correct.
Go to get that money through financing, because we don't have cash to put out $108 million right now to repair schools. That's why when this was first envisioned, what was happening, we were in the era of possibly losing that money. And the spigot got turned off. Thank God it got turned back on. So I just want to tell the principals here too, I just want to be honest with you that whether we go forward with this refinancing and this contractual arrangement or not, all of the things that you've identified in your schools are going to require capital improvement and significant capital outlay. And $7 million a year additional to your maintenance budget ain't going to do it. It's more than likely going to have to, if that's what we do, arrange for Jimmy and his team going in, doing the assessments of everything that you've put together, and say, bringing these schools back up is going to require, I don't know, Jimmy, I'll pull the number out of the air, maybe $80 million. And if that's the case, $7 million a year is not going to take care of that. You're going to have to go and finance that. So I'm making this point just to make sure that we understand what our expectations are. I'm not saying, damn the torpedoes full speed ahead. This may not work. But let's not tell our people an untruth out there that $7 million a year will fix this problem. In additional maintenance money to DOE, it won't, because they're going to have to go and procure, get all the materials, all the labor and everything else to fix the problems that you're discussing right now. So that's the reality we're putting on the table. If you don't want to work with this contract, You don't want to try to fix this contract. You want to go to a new yes, it's called a funding scheme because that's what you do when you go to the market and borrow money. You have a net amount of money you want for your corpus to be able to borrow to fix everything. Just like if you're going to buy a house and you amortize it over 15, 20, 30 years, and you have debt service annually for that. And so I'm just trying to manage expectations, whether this goes forward or not. Whatever you're currently enduring is going to require significant capital outlay. And that will be done under whatever you're champing at the bit, Mr. Swanson. Go for it, Superintendent.
I just want to, first of all, I want to agree with you on that. The need is much larger than what can be done on an annual basis. It's pretty simple math. It doesn't even take you into quadrilaterals. It's just, we want to be sure whatever we put together pays off on the long haul. And what we've seen is we have two models that we've put together that are working and working well. We might be able to refine them a little more and make it work even more to our advantage. But I do understand how the cash has to be generated.
And that's where I'm at.
And Santa Claus is not coming with a bag full of money. So
He's not. There is, believe me, Santa's left the building. I think we've seen that on the federal level. So we're our own elves now, and we got to get to work. But that's my point. Listen, you know, if we know the model, if we go back and basically mark up this bill and tell the contractor, these are the terms, subject to termination, no questions asked, they don't want it, or this is not going to work, fine. But to think we're not going to be back to have to do some sort of financing to get all of these schools when we get them back in our possession is silly. To think that we're going to have cash laying around to just go in there and get with you principals and say, no problem, 6 months, lagga. You're going to have a school that looks like JFK. That's an outright lie. That won't happen. So we're going to continue to work with you. We're going to take your advice in terms of what you've came and said is, look, what I've heard, and I want to see the whites of your eyes on this one. What I've heard when you came in today and said, you're not against the fact that you understand the government of Guam has to do financing in order to do your repairs and keep your schools moving. But what you've clearly said on the record here is, this doesn't work. And if you're not going to fix it, don't move forward. But if you can fix it, fix it. If it works within the scheme, fine. Because there's no way that JFK is just performing because that company decided we love Guam and we want to make sure we have the best school operating ever. They're doing what they're doing under a contractual arrangement. They're following their contractual arrangement. And so if the big IF, capitalized, we move forward, I, for one, will ensure that that's exactly what we do, is the terms going forward are exactly what we have in the two arrangements that are working. If that's not, if that's not something that's going to be acceptable, we just don't even do it. We put our demands on the table and say, in order to do this, this is what has to happen. Subject to termination. Meaning that doesn't matter if they end up, if we go forward. They don't perform, we're done. We're not going to play this game anymore. And so, that's what I want you to know instead of some of the hyperbole, right? If we do the work, we do the work, but we're going to say what you said. And that is, this is the structure, take it or leave it. Because clearly, I think in the plain reading from the financial aspect, especially under the marked up bill recommendation, it goes as high as 70 some million right now in terms of what they've recommended in terms of what the new actual realization of capital is going to be. So we'll do a markup on this bill. We'll come back and ensure before we do anything moving forward to the floor, if we even do, that you will know exactly what the terms are, and working with the contract and the contract arrangement, we'll work with you to ensure that it works structurally. So with that,
Mr. Chair, could I just ask,
yes.
the contractor in his testimony, said he was reviewing a markup version, but we didn't have that in our packets today.
He was
so
recommending.
Could we get a copy
Senator,
of that?
he was recommending a markup version. And yes, we will give that to you in terms of what the new capitalization would mean and the new revenue amount that will be capped out. At this time, this will now conclude today's public hearing on bills number 174 and 156-38. The committee will continue to accept written testimony on the bills within 7 calendar days from today, which may be addressed to myself, Senator Christopher M. Duenas, as chairman of the committee, and mailed to 163 West Chalan Santo Papua, Naganya 96910. You may also email your testimonies to senator.duenas@guamlegislature.gov. Today's public hearing is now adjourned, and the time is now 11:46. Jesus Masi, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you, Guam. Viva.